call this meeting to order. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect to fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. In addition to the moment of silence at each meeting held at a school site, the board will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The board asks you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain that they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruption of the meeting. At this point, we'll take a moment of silence. All right. Dr. Felder, do we have any recognitions tonight?
We do. We have one recognition, and I'm going to invite Mr. Johnson up to tell us all about it.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here tonight. It is truly my honor to be here tonight to help recognize Ms. Emily Gaddy. She was recently awarded the National Athletic Trainers Association's Servant Heart Award. This award recognizes athletic trainers who have demonstrated a long-term commitment to the school, provides public awareness, promotion, and education about the athletic trainer role in their local communities, help establish and maintain the athletic trainer's presence in the secondary setting, promotes the secondary school setting as a career destination, and most importantly, exhibits a consistent and exemplary level of student athletic health care. Emily Gaddy, on behalf of the superintendent and the board, I present to you the certificate of recognition.
We'd like to shake your hand. Oh, well, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Okay.
Fist bump,
yes.
fist
Fist
bump.
bump.
Okay.
I promise that
Fist
fresh
bump.
leaves sanitizer.
Yeah,
we all-
Thank you, Flavia.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Brenda, I was thinking the exact same.
I know, it's like,
Yeah.
you gotta tell Jason, no more handshaking, brother. I know
Did you
it.
see that?
Or the jazz thing, it says.
All right, next on our agenda is the agenda adoption.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we are at public comment. We do have one person signed up for public comment. I will read the public comment charge prior to that. The Board of Education welcomes public comment. Public comments are governed by the board policy on public participation at board meetings, specifically policy 2310 and North Carolina General Statute 143 through 318.17. A person wishing to address the board must sign up prior to the board's regular meeting. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When the 3 minutes ends, the speaker must stop speaking immediately. Yielding time to another speaker will not be permitted. No profane or vulgar language will be permitted or personal abuse against any person. Public comment should not address any specific confidential student or personnel matter. If you wish to address a matter that may require identifying either a student or an employee, please first direct your inquiry to the superintendent for assistance on the process to address your concerns. With that, Deb Childress? Childress, sorry.
Hi, thank you. So I'm here to talk about the action item, which I believe is L1, which is the curriculum audit proposal, which I believe leads to literacy. So I'm a mom of 2 kids in elementary school, in Orange County schools. And I spent some time today thinking about how to talk about this because I'm a psychologist and I'm a researcher and I approach problems like that, and I'm also a mom. And I can't talk about reading without being sad, because as a mom, I did it right. I knew I did it right. I am an early childhood developmental psychologist. I knew that I had given them tons of literature. I had read to them. We were the people who got teased about our book bag, our ever-present book bag. Everywhere we went, we always had a book bag. So I knew that when my kids came to school, they would learn to read. I knew it. And then I started getting the 3 words that I hate the most: needs most support. Or now I think it's something intensive intervention is needed, or intensive support is needed. So I sent my kids to school prepared to read, and they haven't learned to read in Orange County schools. Instead, I spend $15,000-ish a year to have them tutored outside. And my kids are not alone. I go to the library, it's hard to get a tutoring room because there are so many parents there who are getting extra resources. But I know that I have it figured out now, right? I've done my research, I've done my homework, I've done the science work. I've read the peer-reviewed articles, I've talked to the experts, because as a psychologist, I knew that that's what I needed to do. As a mom, I knew that's what I had to do, because I knew I couldn't let them fail. But my pain really at this point is that I walk down the halls and I see other kids. And I know that those kids are also, about half of them, probably getting some level of needs most support, because that's what our data shows us. And I know that those moms and dads may not know the things that I know now, and they may not have the resources. I pretty much every year get to debate whether I have to sell my house in order to provide the next year's tutoring for my kids. I have a house to sell. I can make that choice. There are parents who can't make that choice because they don't have those resources. They don't know those things. And I beg you, there is an entire science of reading that we have got to leverage. I am not a literacy expert. I've had to learn way more about it than I ever intended or wanted to. Consult with the experts. I'm excited that you're doing this. It is long overdue, really huge gaps, and I could review an entire body of literature that talks about the negative outcomes that come when kids cannot read. I mean, that's the entry into our society. You get an email and it has misspellings in it, you immediately discount the information that person has given you. We all do it. And we have got to make sure that when kids leave our schools, that they are not making those sorts of errors, that they have the tools that they need to give them the full range of options. So when a mom gets a note home that says something about their child is something other than they need the most amount of support, and no real roadmap on what it is other than read more, read more. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, board reports, Hillary?
Okay, we got lost in that. Let me find my notes. First, thank you, Ms. Childress, for sharing that with us. Since the last board meeting, I had the pleasure of being invited to the Boomerang Open House by Ms. Tammy Pfeiffer. It was beautiful. It was so exciting to see this therapeutic setting that is available to our students who sort of need an alternative to being suspended, and I'm just thrilled it's closer to Hillsborough now, in Hillsborough, and I feel really lucky that our students have that resource. We had a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss budget items, and I believe the whole board was there. I was able to attend a listen and learn at AL Sandback. I really appreciated the engagement and the feedback from parents, and also the hard work of the staff that did such a great job facilitating the conversation and providing information to our families. I attended a policy committee meeting. I read at New Hope for Read Across America Week, and heard a rumor that our board chair dressed up as an elephant when he came.
It's true.
And all the kids really liked it. I also went to a terrific kids ceremony at New Hope, and I just wanted to shine a light on that because it was so beautiful. And it's half in English and half in Spanish. So all of the kids who have native Spanish-speaking families, they do that part. They read the feedback from the teachers for the terrific kids in Spanish, and I thought that was so awesome and such a great way to handle a diverse population there. And just wanted y'all to know how cool that was. And finally, it is National Social Work Month, so I just wanted to thank our amazing social workers and support staff that wrap around our students and families. You make such a difference in the lives of our students and our families, and we're just really grateful for you. And finally, it's Sarah's birthday, so happy birthday, Sarah.
With that,
Next.
With that, you can proceed.
My daughter came home from after school right before I was leaving for this meeting and said, "Did you know it's National Nap Day?" And I didn't, so I didn't take a nap, but it is also, March 9th is also National Nap Day. Okay. I went to the Boomerang Open House, that was really great. I really appreciate, I talked with like a program director there about how they work with the kids on adjusting back to school and sort of setting goals and things like that, and that was excellent. I really enjoyed the Listen and Learns at Orange High School and Stanford and New Hope. I want to thank, it's no small thing for families to come out for several hours. It's no small thing for our staff to come out to all of them for several hours, all those evenings away from your own families. So I just want to say thank you. I know that that's a lot. Just really appreciate it and those direct connections. Went to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. I went to a 4th and 5th grade play at Cameron Park called A Kid's Life. It was a musical. What they were able to do in just a couple of months of rehearsals was pretty astounding. I hope to get invited to all of the elementary school musicals in the future. And then the weekend before last, I went to the first convening of the School Board Partners Fellowship, which is a school boarding fellowship that I've been accepted to. It is sort of focused on, hold on, I pulled it up so I could read you. The mission of School Board Partners is to connect, inspire, and support anti-racist elected school board members across the country to lead with courage, competence, and impact. That sounds like a tall order. I don't know, I just went to the first one, but I'm excited to bring back whatever I learned to the board. And then my last thing is, I just wanted to thank Dr. Felder for the swift response to the coronavirus and really assembling the team. And I know we already have some things in place, but it's a great unknown and with a lot of potential for disruption. So I just send my appreciation to everybody who's working on that, because I know it sort of popped up.
It's a team effort, yeah. Yep.
That's it.
Matthew?
I also went to the policy subcommittee meeting this week, but the joint meeting with the county commissioners in Chapel Hill, Carrboro. Hopefully the county commissioners will follow through on the positive support that they were saying that they had for pre-K, actually counting our pre-K students so that they recognize that we need that space for the pre-K students because it's an important part. But Ms. Childers, I want to thank you so much that you have just fed into one of my concerns that I'm going to bring up tonight, and it's going to do with the budget item that I'm going to request that we pull from the consent agenda. So hopefully you'll at least stay through that discussion. Maybe I can get them to move it up to instead of the end to early on, so you're not here too long. But thank you for bringing that out. Thanks.
Yes, well, I too attended the joint meeting with BOCC and the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools. And I also had an opportunity to read to students at New Hope last week, and I'll be going back tomorrow to take pictures because I had different hats, and the students wanted to wear my hat and wanted me to take pictures of them with my, so I have the pictures and I'll deliver them to you tomorrow. I left them on the dining room table. I was so excited to come to this board meeting. Saturday morning was the regional spelling bee at Riverside High School. We had awesome spellers. The experience was both exciting and stressful for students and it's for parents and for me. Unfortunately, I reacted to one of the words that I thought was just too hard for those students. And I said, oh no, and then everybody turned around and was like, but then people started doing high fives to me. Because the word was ridiculous, but that was not the word, but it was ridiculous. But I was really proud of our students, and I enjoy going there to support them. And last week, I received a really kind note from Senator Tom Tillis. I will not read all of it. He tells us that a strong education is vitally important to the success and growth of young people, and he applauded my commitment to improving educational opportunities in Orange County and beyond. That was in response to my visit to his office along with Amy Fowler. I keep saying it like, Amy Farrah Fowler, but it's not the same. And congratulations to everybody. I'm so glad the election is over. It was very clarifying. 2020 elections have been very clarifying. And I will pass on, if you get any letters asking for board members, Mr. Chair, from the School Boards Association, just send them, because last week I went through the list of submissions and I didn't see an Orange County submission on there where they asked for, because I appointed people to the Legislative Committee, and we didn't have any in Orange County, because I would have tagged my own. So anyway.
We haven't got it.
You didn't get it.
No.
It came out about a month ago, and it went to
No.
all chairs. But anyway, well, if I would have known that, I would have just thrown one of our board members' names in, because the folks are gonna return to Raleigh, as you know, next month for a short session.
Yep.
They will be done in June with or without a budget, and we all know that.
Yep.
But anyway, it was good to hear from Senator Tillis. I didn't hear from Senator Burr, but that's fine. Thanks a lot.
Right, thank you.
Okay, I just got a few here. Like everyone else, I attended the joint county commission meeting, and I'd just like to congratulate Ms. Carrie Doyle on her election to the board. I'm finished.
All right. First, the News of Orange paper had 2 stories on the front page from a student intern from Orange County Schools to the CTE, which is wonderful news for them to get the opportunity and for us to display some of our talent here. I wanted to thank the CTE department and the Cultural Arts for their newsletters that they give the board on all of the updates that are going on. These are very helpful and very insightful for us to know what's going on. The Listen and Learns, Orange High School, CW Stanford, AL Standback, New Hope. Again, everybody mentioned it before. Thank you to all the staff for your time and effort to make these successful. They are run very efficiently and get the points across, and I appreciate all the hard efforts on that. I was able to go and watch the MADS, which was at Orange High School. Excellent performance and talent. It's one of those where they're allowed to pick some of their content and have the students play instruments. So it was very, very, amazing to see the talent of these kids. I did go to the eggs with elected officials. The only reason I bring that up here is I did talk to a lot of the companies there about getting internships or maybe smaller involvements into the school. And there was one that was very interested, and I discussed with them about our project search and the sterilization projects that we've done. So I've been sending out some emails that you've seen to try to get more interest in allowing our students to be interns to some of these local businesses, not the large ones, the local ones. I wanted to thank Dr. Felder and Connie for their excellent work with the Justice United discussion, talking about our successful programs as Grow Your Own, the Future Teachers, and the Alternate License Program. Lots of positive feedback and discussion on that. The joint session with the county commissioners, I'd like to thank all the staff for their hard work in preparing for that, and the board for all the great discussion with the county commissioners, especially on the SAFO and our building facilities needs. The FFA ham and egg supper at the Orange High School cafeteria, very well attended with the students and parents. And the reason I bring it up is Mr. Hunt was out there. He's not yet the principal there, but he was at that event. I did see him at the math concert and at the Listen and Learn for Orange High School. So I just wanted to thank him for his early engagement with the families and students. The Cedar Ridge IB Art exposition, that reception that happened. Lots of very creative students, thoughtful work, and the teachers and staff. Some amazing artwork and thoughts that have gone into that. Just appreciated their time and the open discussion about their inspirations. Policy meeting, we had good discussion. Some of that's gonna lead into an item here tonight, so I appreciate everybody from the policy committee on that. The Boomerang Open House, I was able to go to that as well, and as many board members mentioned that very thoughtful intake process about the student cards and the student engagement on their concerns, also the worksheets on how they go back into the school systems. As Sarah mentioned, it was very insightful, and making a connection with the family and students. It's such a great program for our students, and reducing the overall suspensions. The Orange High School Theater, We're All Guilty. It was a great show, very passionate students, and all the money they raised from that, they donated. So it's great to see our students doing something for a cause. They did not keep any of the money for themselves, they donated it all. On an education note, I was selected to be part of the UNC Center for Public Leadership and Governance. It's a 4-month program called Leading the Way to Board Excellence. It's a great discussion and perspectives from school board members, county commissioners. There's a mix of different people from different parts of the state, talking about all of the challenges of governing. And one of the sayings that came out of there that I think is just great perspective from UNC was, you govern as a group, you do politicking as an individual. So it's great insight from really an easy thing to remember. One item just for the board that we're trying to work on is a legislative update with the Chapel Hill Board of Education as well. This would allow us directly to talk to our legislative leaders, provide our priorities, and ask questions about the upcoming session. As soon as we get a date from them, meaning the legislators, I'll let the board know. We're kind of on their schedule, but this is a way for us to give them our legislative priorities. But like I said, it's in early discussions on how we could get something, given the short session that's coming up and what the outlook is. That's it for me. Dr. Felder?
Mr. Adjourn. So, tonight I'd like to recognize the artwork of students in 2 of our schools. So behind us here is artwork from students at Grady Brown Elementary School. It is an art project that exposed our students to a linear perspective. Students viewed experiments that demonstrated how the brain interprets information seen. They were encouraged to pick a new angle to look at things and think more deeply about how and why others perceive the world differently. And then to my left, you see artwork from A.L. Standback. This is the artwork of 8th graders in the back over there to my left. It's artwork from our 7th grade students. The 8th graders studied contour, cross contour, and blind contour, light, source, and values. 7th graders studied, like our students at Grady Brown, linear perspective. They also studied Renaissance, golden mean, and texture. And so we are very proud of our district's arts program. One of the biggest benefits of arts education for students is that it can actually improve their learning skills, it improves their school attendance, it improves their critical thinking skills, and it improves their creativity. And so I will continue to highlight the artwork that our students are engaged in. Also want to mention Listen and Learns, and so since January, we have embarked on a series of Listen and Learns to engage stakeholders. The Listen and Learns create an opportunity for the district to listen deeply and broadly to a multitude of stakeholders as we seek to gain a comprehensive understanding of both the district's strengths and the district's challenges. And folks are telling us a lot of interesting things, and we're listening. And so we've had 7 Listen and Learns thus far at schools throughout the district. We have an additional 5 remain. And so between now and the next board meeting, there will be 2 Listen and Learns this week at Central Elementary on March 10th and at Pathways Elementary on March 12th. Then we have Grady Brown and Cedar Ridge High School. They will have a combined Listen and Learn, and that's on March 17th. Cameron Park is scheduled for March 19th. And so those would round out the Listen and Learns for the next couple of weeks, at least prior to the next board meeting. Then we have one. Next board meeting's on the 23rd. The final Listen and Learn is on the 24th, and that is at Partnership Academy. So that's, that will be the last Listen and Learn. Again, we have pizza dinner provided from 6 to 6:30, and the actual meeting begins from 6:30 to 8, and free childcare is provided. And so just know that if one is not able to attend one of the remaining meetings, there's always the online tool, and stakeholders are taking advantage of that online tool to give us feedback. And last but not least, there are 3 Listen and Learns planned before spring break at each of the high schools. As we are giving students who are our stakeholders too an opportunity to tell us what the strengths of this district from their perspective, where their challenges, and what recommendations they have. So I look forward to engaging with our students as well. And I too applaud the staff, because this is not something that's been done in isolation. It's a team effort, and they are showing up and engaging right along with me. So that's been great.
Thank you. Right, next, consent agenda. I do know that there are a couple of items that need to be pulled or have been requested to be pulled. The first one is the Equity Task Force bylaws. Matthew, you had,
I want to pull the budget amendments 2019-20 item number 4.
okay. Is that it?
Other than just
Well,
the personnel.
I'm just gonna make a quick comment about the mechanical work. I'm perfectly okay with it. The important thing is, it's highlighting that when we defer maintenance, that once we fix one other problem, it's causing other deferred issues to crash.
Yes.
So that's the only comment I have on that. No need to pull it.
Okay, do we have a motion for the consent agenda minus those 2 items?
With the revised personnel
With the
report.
revised.
Thank you.
Motion to approve revised.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? All right. So we'll move straight to the budget amendment.
The reason I requested to pull that, there's 2 issues that I wanted to stimulate a discussion on. The first one is coming in, excuse me, and it's just kinda on the state public funds where we got the test result bonuses, AP, IB, CTE. And I know, Rhonda, you were able to get out to all the board members how that was split between the different schools. I think it's important that the board realizes that some of our lower performing schools did not receive these bonuses, because that's a segue into the next part that I want to get into. It is important for us to recognize the areas that are performing well. But in my opinion, we also have to make sure that we get the resources into our underperforming schools so that those teachers or those schools have the financial resources necessary to make sure that we can teach our children to read. That we've got to figure out how to get those resources in there. So the real one that I wanted to actually have the discussion on, unless anybody wants to go into details about how the bonuses were dispersed, is local budget amendment 2. I don't know if we can pull it up so that visitors can see it or not. But the reason that we're transferring close to $150,000, and we're not transferring. It was originally coded under equity. So I just make sure that everybody understands that. But it was under instructional services. Along the same line, when I had the discussion today, and I did not go over my 2-hour limit before anybody says anything, under the 6,000 series, that we potentially have a surplus in the 6,000s, which are system-wide supports, that could free up some of that instructional services thing that we fully fund our equity department, the way that we meant to fund it, but also continue to keep our instructional services overfunded so that this summer, if we need, or if we recognize as a board that there is a need for a very intensive reading program for our underperforming students, that we've got additional funds, and that's close to $145,000 that we could free up by pulling money from our 6,000 area, that we have a potential surplus, and just leave the other in our instructional and say, hey, can we use that for the students that are at need, and get both of them. That we have to fund our equity department, but let's keep the instructional services there too, the money for that, so that we can have a good program this summer for our students that aren't succeeding. Get both of them. So I'll, Rhonda, if you want to clarify anything that I said, we had a long discussion today, under 2 hours.
Yes, sir. I think what, the only clarification that I would like to add is when this budget transfer is all in support of the equity work. It was originally budgeted in the 5,000 area of under equity, and as at the time, we didn't know what that work was gonna look like and what it was gonna entail. As we have begun to do the work, those expenditures are truly falling up under the total program support services area. So this transfer was moving it from, it was still in the equity area, it was just moving it from equity and instruction services to equity and system-wide support to support the work that we are doing at this time. I do not want the perception that we shifted money from instructional services to support system-wide services. Actually, the budget was held in instructional support equity, and we just moved it to system-wide support equity to match the actual effort that is being done.
And just one question for clarity again, because I totally in agreement with that. All we're doing is moving the money. But now that we're closer to the end of the budget year, we are seeing a potential surplus in our 6,000 system support area, yes or no?
That is correct.
Okay.
But
Maybe not as much as we need, but there's a potential surplus there, yes or no?
if you look at the total system-wide support area, there is a potential surplus at this point in time of, I believe we roughly discussed, I can't recall the numbers right off the top of my head. However, from my lens, I was keeping the work in the equity area instead of moving funds from another department or area in the district when I may not know what can come up between now and the end of the year.
But I'm still gonna, on that, even even though we don't know what's gonna come up between now and the end of the year, let's say that we turn out that we're wrong on the 6,000 series, we still have a significant fund balance. So that if it turned out that we were wrong on the funds being available in the 6,000, we could still fully fund and grow our equity department, which needs to happen, and also start freeing up funds so that we decided that we need a very intensive reading program this summer to address our failing students, our underperforming students, that we might be able to do both. We keep the money into our instructional services, where it is now, and then also say, well, with our potential surplus in our system-wide support services, and if we had to dig into fund balance, we could still allow our equity department to grow, that we could do both on that. The other thing is that at some point, we're probably gonna say that we are gonna need some support at our local schools for equity instruction also, that it's not gonna be system-wide. Some of the schools' needs may be different than what the whole system is. That some schools may need more equity training than other schools.
So I'd recommend that this discussion go into budget committee. I mean, this is a lot of detail for.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, cause I hear the discussion, but given the details and, you know, getting input from Dr. Felder and other instructional, I think it'd be best suited to go in the budget committee unless anyone feels differently.
And we'll be talking more about fund balance in our upcoming budget recommendation.
I have no doubt. Okay,
It'll
thank you.
be the work session of this.
Okay, very good.
All right, the next item.
We do need
Oh, we do
Well,
need to
we
approve
need
it,
to-
yes.
yeah.
we do
I
need to
move the
approve it.
approval.
Well, wait a minute, if we're, well, I wanna make sure what, we're approving the budget amendments as written, or we're approving to move it to budget committee?
You'll have to decide. What's the motion?
What's your motion?
Oh, I was motioning her recommendation.
To
To
approve
approve
the
it as
budget.
is. As
Correct,
is.
correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have one dissension. All right, the next item, the Equity Task Force bylaws. Okay, this was pulled, Jonathan had some modifications, if you look in your package, there's some yellow edits, and so just to make sure everyone had seen those edits, we just brought them in to have a quick review.
Dr. Keeling and I have had some really good conversations, and anything you liked about the bylaws, praise Dr. Keeling. Anything you don't like, criticize me. But anyway, if you had questions about the changes, did you wanna walk them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
just walk through them.
First of all, I appreciate your, taking the time to really look through the bylaws and to help me to make sure that everything is covered. So in, section A of the introduction, the last sentence was, modified a little bit for clarity purposes. That the members of the task force will refer to OCS administration should individual complaints come up. So we recognize that, when people know who's on the task force, they may make them aware of different concerns that they have. If it's a general concern, then that's something that we can take back as a task force and discuss it. But if it's specific, relates to specific students, specific staff, specific schools, we want the task force to know that, they need to refer that on to administration and let us handle that type of a situation. And then we just refer here to, School Board Policy 1742, so that we're in accordance with that policy. Kind of along those same lines, in section B, purpose, we added that the, OCS Equity Task Force is not an investigative or a hearing body. So again, if a complaint comes up that is specific, the members of the task force, should not feel like they have to investigate and figure out, did this really happen? What was all the particulars about it? Again, they should just, refer that back to administration for us to handle. Next, also under B, number 3, again, same wording for clarity, the understanding that specific individual complaints will be referred. But again, we didn't pull out that people may,
come to the task force to, again, make them aware of different things that are going on so that we can address them. We also want people to have a voice, and they may go through the task force to ensure that they have a voice. So we're keeping it all in there, that the task force is open to hearing equity-related feedback, concerns, as well as celebration updates, general concerns. But again, still just making sure that, individual specific incidents, that the task force doesn't have to deal with those. Under membership, the OCS Equity Task Force will be comprised of a broad group of diverse stakeholders and will include students, parents and guardians, administrators, and community members. Initially, the wording listed out some of the different groups, and as Mr. Bloomberg and I were talking, we both just felt like there are groups that we're missing, and so we don't want it to be that we're saying, oh, it's certain gender or geographic and race, and then we left out religion and neurodiversity and ability, so we just left it as it will be a diverse group of stakeholders. This way, all the groups are covered and no one is missed inadvertently. Also under membership, number 4, this wording was a suggestion by Mr. Bloomberg to say that the superintendent and the chief equity officer, just wanted to make sure that we had that the superintendent also has a say in who is on the equity task force, even though the superintendent does serve as a member of the task force. We just wanted to make sure that that was highlighted. I don't know if you wanted to add any explanation.
It's just a chain of authority issue for me there, that ultimately if you're having somebody that is within the cabinet and under the superintendent's authority making decisions, it's still subject to the superintendent, and so I just wanted to have the superintendent in there, so I thought on that.
Heather?
I'm just wondering, were these created with the equity task force? Have they read over this? Has everyone who's a part of that group sort of seen these and approved them as a group? How was that process?
So the initial, yes. The revised, yes. These highlighted, no. And I feel like I need to defer to Mr. Bloomberg, because I think the understanding is that the task force falls under the board, and so the board has kind of a say in how the task force is operated and the bylaws. So I'm gonna defer to him for clarification on that.
Heather?
I would personally just be more comfortable voting on it if I knew that the whole task force had seen them and felt comfortable with them. That's just me.
There's no issue, we don't have to approve this
Yeah,
tonight.
right.
There's no harm in letting them review it first.
And I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I had no issue with that, I
Yeah,
just
no,
wanted the
no.
feedback,
Yeah,
yeah.
just-
That when they review it, I'd like to have ask one question. That we've got 6 students representing on the task force, yet we only have 4 parents. I'd just be curious whether or not if they think 4 parents are sufficient on that.
Like they may want more.
They may want more. That the parents are potentially underrepresented.
Anybody have any questions for me with the suggested changes that I recommended? And I totally support, and Dr. Keeling and I were talking tonight, it was, should we just move this to a discussion item anyway? So I like the idea of getting the equity task force take first, and so that would just be a motion to table it so that you can get feedback from the equity task force before bringing it back.
Right, I motion to table.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I wanna say, I'm in agreement with the changes.
Yeah,
However,
me
too.
if we establish a group and then we usurp their authority,
Right.
then what's the,
Agree.
Right.
Totally
Okay.
agree.
If they feel
Alright.
good about it, I feel great about it. I
Okay.
just wanna
There's
make
no
sure
rush in
everybody-
approving it.
just make sure we're equitably establishing bylaws for the equity task force.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next agenda item is the proclamation from the governor. Do we have a board member that would like to read it for the National Social Worker Month? Thank you, sir.
National Social Worker Month 2020 by the Governor of the State of North Carolina on proclamation. Whereas the social work profession has worked for generations to strengthen the well-being and meet the basic needs of all people, especially those who are vulnerable, oppressed, and/or living in poverty. And whereas the social work profession is a diverse profession that allows people of every generation, ethnicity, sexual identity, and religious background to make an immediate positive impact on our state and nation. And whereas social workers elevate and empower people, giving them the ability to solve problems, cope with personal roadblocks, and acquire the resources they need to succeed. And whereas the social work profession is one of the fastest growing professional industries in the United States, with more than 777,000 people expected to be employed as social workers by 2028. And whereas social workers are active in government, schools, universities, social service agencies, communities, corporations, the military, and health and mental health care settings across North Carolina. And whereas this year's Social Work Month theme, Social Workers, Generations Strong, embodies the heroic work of social workers who for more than a century have worked to better our society for all people. And whereas for decades, social workers have advocated rights for people of all races, genders, ethnicities, cultures, abilities, socioeconomic backgrounds, religions, and sexualities. And whereas the social work profession has contributed to advancements in our society over the past century, including voting rights, improved workplace safety, minimum wage, and social safety net programs that help to ameliorate poverty and hunger. And whereas the state of North Carolina commends social workers throughout our state and nation for their contributions to our communities and for their dedication to improving quality of life for all people. Now therefore, I, Roy Cooper, Governor of the state of North Carolina, do hereby proclaim March 2020 as National Social Worker Month in North Carolina and commend its observance to all citizens.
Motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for reading, Sarah.
I like reading out loud. Call on me anytime.
Well, you do it so well.
Well, thank you very much.
Next item is the policy update, first reading, policy 7312, child abuse and related threats to child safety.
Good evening, board members,
Good evening.
Superintendent Felder, and the community. I'd like to bring you recommendations from staff with regards to changes in policy 7312. Essentially, we are recommending the adoption of the North Carolina School Board Association policy, and I want to highlight some of the modifications in the School Board Association version. First, you know, the title change, and this revision is reflecting the expanded breadth of the policy to child abuse and related threats. The introductory paragraphs are revised to add a new reporting requirement and to more clearly differentiate the circumstances that trigger each of the 3 types of reports now required by law. The recommendations from the school board policy adds a new section A to address the new duty to report certain crimes against children to local law enforcement. The duty to report in section A extends to employees, contractors, and volunteers. The recommendation to the school board policy updates old section A to now be section B to require contractors and volunteers to report suspected child abuse, and also clarifies the circumstances for reporting. The recommended changes also includes updates to section B that will now be section C to require contractors and volunteers to report child maltreatment in a child care facility. Section C now becomes section D to address cooperation with local law enforcement, and a new added section F to require a child sexual abuse and sex trafficking training program to be provided to designated school personnel in even-numbered years, and to require such personnel to participate in the training as required by law. The additional change is in section D2, which requires a clarification that staff cooperate fully with investigation reports subject to this policy. And that's an overview of the changes to policy 7312. The recommendations are supported by the Human Resources Department as well as by the Student Support Services Director, Ms. Sharita Cobb.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
No, first
Are we
reading.
not gonna have any comment?
We will, Yeah, I just have a motion on the floor. Do you want
I
to
mean,
pull it back?
No.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Okay, so I think that there's a typo. In the second paragraph, right after the blue, it says suspected human trafficking, involuntary servitude, and sexual servitude of a child and death of a child as a result of maltreatment are special forms of child abuse under law. I think we need to, there's two ands, so it makes it seem like the sexual servitude of a child and death of a child kind of go together. I think we need to strike the first and, put a comma after sexual servitude of a child to make it like an accurate list.
So we'll make those technical changes.
And then I had just a question, especially knowing that we're gonna require, or whoever is the state, we are gonna require, volunteers and contractors and so forth to report. What kind of supports or trainings or other things are we doing in order to put in place to ensure that people understand what this requirement is? And it's a little complicated because depending on the situation, you have to report to a different body, so just what are we putting in place to support people to do that?
We've done some training with staff already. We've created a form in conjunction with our attorney that differentiates those reporting that has to go to law enforcement and the reporting that has to go to DHSS. And we will continue to do additional training with regards to our contractors and volunteers that's scheduled.
Okay, so if I volunteer to read in my daughter's school, I will get information
Yes.
about how to report this?
Yes.
Okay.
So, we have, the requirement, I believe, Jonathan, 2020, that we have to have, some of the additional training in place, but we've already put some trainings in place already.
Hillary?
so are we gonna notify current approved volunteers that this has,
Yes.
okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Matthew, did you have a comment?
Mine was on the volunteer side too, that's critical, that they know that there's a legal responsibility now, because when you're aware of something, you have to report it. The other one is from a legal requirement, how are we gonna work it in contracts with our contractors?
Right, we're
That
gonna-
this has nothing to do with the policy itself,
Mm.
it's one of the areas. that
We already have a
make
lot of information about them having to comply with our policies, but we are looking at some specific language around this. I mean, the reality is that the reporting to law enforcement for sexual or physical abuse of a child applies to everybody.
Everybody.
It's not, that school district's going above and beyond to say, hey, we wanna let you know here that this is important and make sure you know about your reporting responsibilities, but it applies to everybody. And it's a misdemeanor not to do it, so it's a big deal. But yes, I mean, I know that Teresa's on it in terms of a lot of things. This is obviously implementing Senate Bill 199, and Dr. Felder jumped right on it and wanted training for staff, so there's already been some staff training about it. But yes, your questions are all right on point. What about the people more on the fringes that you wouldn't, the volunteers and the contractors and so on and so forth? And so I know that Teresa's working with volunteers, and we will look at our general contract with contractors to make sure it's covered.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. We do have some technical changes, so I believe,
You had a motion and a second.
in a
Yeah.
second.
Are you all comfortable with the motion, the people made the motion in the second, that the grammatical change is
Yeah.
just
That's
understood
fine.
to be
Yeah,
changed?
yeah.
I got it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
On first reading.
First reading, so when it comes
First
back,
reading.
is it gonna be on,
Consent. and
consent?
agenda.
Yeah.
Consent.
Okay,
Hillary, you had a
I'll ask.
clarification?
Well, I'll ask it after the meeting, so.
Okay, okay. All right, action items, we have the curriculum audit proposal, which is a presentation.
Yes, so we have Mr. Jared Gibson. He's a project director with TNTP. TNTP has been around since 1997. They've worked with every level of public school systems to help schools and districts and states support and sustain great teaching. And joining him tonight is Dr. Chris Gammon, who is the executive director for curriculum and instruction. So, Dr. Gammon?
Yeah, so we'd like to welcome Mr. Gibson here this evening. He is here to answer any questions that you all may have around the upcoming literacy audit proposal that has been presented tonight, I believe in closed session. I don't know if he was asking, does he need to present anything this evening? I don't think there was a.
Not in closed session.
Yes.
No, here,
Right,
right.
but he does have a presentation, so, Mr. Hunt, do you have, could you help, support?
Yeah, he brought up his.
Oh, he has his own computer.
Yeah.
I think he is aware, since he was here to answer questions, I
Okay.
don't think he's expected to present.
Are you presenting as well?
You'll have to unvote the Dawn.
You were?
I'm happy to.
Okay.
Sure, you wanna go through and-
Yeah, be glad to. Yeah, so, the literacy, the curriculum audit proposal, it's been shared, obviously, with you through Assembly. I wanna thank you all for having us before you this evening. In 2015, Orange County Schools unveiled a 5-year strategic plan prioritizing greater access to literacy instruction and resources, really with a focus on eliminating achievement gaps between different student subgroups. As part of this plan, Orange County Schools at that time adopted new instructional materials in literacy. As Orange County Schools begins our work on our next 5-year strategic plan, TNTP, who Mr. Gibson is here to represent, is eager to help us by assessing the impact of the new materials on student achievement and making recommendations to continue improving literacy instruction in the district. We have seen recently some data points that have been shared around our current status with literacy. In TNTP's recent study, The Opportunity Myth, in 2018 found that most students, especially students of color, and those from low-income families, those with mild to moderate disabilities, as well as English language learners, aren't fully prepared for their next step. But when students have access to grade-appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers who hold high levels of expectation, their achievement increases dramatically, even if they started the school year behind. And so the purpose of TNTP joining with Orange County Schools, this proposal, is to ensure that all students have access to the resources they need to become proficient readers by understanding the current state of literacy instruction in Orange County Schools, providing professional development on key research and literacy, and advising staff as they create professional development plans for the upcoming school year. We are proposing conducting this literacy audit in all 7 of our elementary schools, as well as all 3 of our middle schools. This is definitely, we believe is needed with our #1 foci being literacy instruction and doubling down on that area, as Dr. Felder has mentioned before. We would like to use a similar approach to the recent report, the Opportunity Myth, to analyze instruction and assignments. So through this partnership with TNTP, and Mr. Gibson can certainly answer some of these questions a little more specifically, is to understand priorities and identify key questions, provide professional development for our staff, administer teacher surveys, collect and analyze meaningful information, and then share their findings and make recommendations to our leadership team in Orange County School, as well as advising the district staff. TNTP proposes that this audit will take approximately 16 weeks of support to be fulfilled, including planning for the data collection, coordinating logistics with each school, and facilitating any professional development sessions starting this month in March through mid-April, conducting the data collection in late April through early May, and analyzing the data, as well as presenting their findings and supporting the district with plans for next year in late May through early July. So TNTP is, of course, willing to tailor the timeline to fit the needs of OCS. We are in a process right now of kind of working through what that can look like now that we're in this latter half of the school year. But the literacy audit is something that we feel strongly that we're in need of, and we're excited to start this venture to help all students in Orange County Schools.
And good evening, board members and Dr. Felder, and also just to say, even though the TNTP is a national organization, I'm thrilled to be here because I actually live here in Hillsborough, North Carolina, so for the first time ever, I won't have to get on a plane.
And you don't want to get on the plane right now.
There you go.
So speaking of that flexible timeline, should we all be out of school for several weeks, we're happy to also move it. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But if you have any questions about TNTP as an organization or some of the references to the Opportunity Myth, I'm happy to answer those. But I thought I give you just a quick overview of our experience at TNTP with doing these sort of curriculum audits. So this has kind of become a popular thing over the past few years in school districts as they started to take a critical look at their data and say, you know, we're really not serving some of our students well, what can we do better? So over the past couple of years, we've been in over 5,300 classrooms in 604 schools and looked at 16,817 pieces of student work to try to get a sense of what's happening in specific schools and districts that we can better support some of our students. And in literacy in particular, this is kind of the general process that we go through as we meet with district officials to learn more about their priorities and questions, figure out exactly what data we need to collect, which often includes classroom observations and student work, but can include teacher surveys, focus groups, etc. And then we share our findings and make recommendations. And so usually that could look like saying, you know, we were in elementary school classrooms and we noticed that in kindergarten classrooms, students weren't getting a lot of opportunities to practice their phonics skills with a companion text or with writing. In a middle school classroom, that could look like, you know, we noticed that your texts were below the recommended grade level in terms of complexity for those texts. So you all have access to a lot of student achievement data in your district, and our job is to help get underneath that and figure out what are some of the root causes behind that, and then help you all develop plans to remedy those causes. So at each point, we're really asking two key questions. Is the instruction that we're seeing in classrooms really aligned to the full extent of grade level standards? And then do teachers have truly high expectations for students? And so you can see some of the things that we would do there to collect answers to those questions. And we don't just sort of make up some of the things that we do. Here are some of the publicly available nationally vetted tools that we use. I have some copies of these, some printed copies if you're interested in looking at them a little bit more. But the Student Achievement Partners instructional practice guides really drive a lot of our data collection work here. It's been really powerful in helping us identify, in particular literacy classrooms, what are the aspects of instruction that might be strong, what are the aspects of instruction that could be improved upon. And then the last thing that we included in our proposal for Orange County Schools is not just to produce this report and say, hey, here's what we found in classrooms, but actually to work with the curriculum and instruction department as they plan for the upcoming school year. What are some of their PD priorities? And then because we've helped other districts with this, to give them some access to some of our resources. So if they needed a session on text complexity, we've done that before. We can give that to the district so that they're not starting from scratch and developing those resources. Any questions for us?
I have
Lori?
several, but.
You go first.
Go ahead.
No, if you
No,
want.
mine's legal, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, thank you for being here. I think this is really exciting and needed in our district. So are you going to be analyzing the EOG data from our students this current year or from previous years?
We'll be actually analyzing classroom observation data, so
Okay.
we'll send observers into classrooms to collect
Mhm.
data about what's happening in schools right now, and then we'll look at we'll collect samples of student work from those classrooms
Okay,
and analyze that.
so you're not using particular student, like end of grade, like state assessments sort of thing?
Correct. I feel like you all have a good sense of your,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I just wasn't sure if you were using that data or not. I'm wondering if your company has a particular stance about the science of reading. That's something that is, talked about a whole lot, and I'm just wondering if you can give me the nutshell version of if that's something that's like typically tied into things that you're suggesting, or, this isn't my wheelhouse, so I
Yeah.
don't exactly know how to pose this question, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
yeah, so, I think what might be helpful is if I actually share with you a couple of samples of the instructional practice guide. So those are the foundational skills.
Cute.
And then there's not enough for everybody, so, but there's
Okay.
the reading.
Yeah, well, you can give it to him and, yeah, that's, okay, that's fine.
Some of them-
We're good. What is
Are
it?
they all the
This is
same?
different.
They're
So-
different.
Oh, it's different.
To
Okay.
sort of answer your question here, so in these instructional practice guides,
Yeah. Zero.
so if you look at the foundational skills one, the things that we look for when we would see a foundational skills lesson would be things like, is the teacher using grade level standards? Are they modeling the skill that is prescribed by the grade level standards? Are they giving students practice? So I think a lot of times when you're referring to science of reading, the things that have become very popular over the past year or two are the research around explicit instruction, particularly around those reading foundational skills, and that's what's captured in that instructional practice guide around foundational skills. And then in the one around reading comprehension, we would be capturing a lot of data around text complexity and the types of questions students are engaging with. And so a lot of the science of reading lately is about the importance of students having access to complex texts, especially ones that build students' background knowledge. So I'd say those two aspects of science of reading definitely guide our work.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And then I just have
Sure,
last
keep
question.
going.
How have districts measured their success working with you in the past? Is that a point where they're looking at end of grade testing or state assessments, before and after you've been there? Can you give me an idea of what that
Yeah.
has looked like for people? And
Sure. I mean, I think that depends on the scope of the engagement, right? So in
Sure.
some districts, we might have a multi-year engagement where we're actually helping principals and teachers with actual coaching that we're doing with them. And so in those circumstances, wanting to see student achievement move pretty quickly would certainly be a sort of one of the outcomes that we look for. You know, here where we're giving more findings and recommendations, I would say it would mostly be, number one, the curriculum and instruction department feels supported, like that they feel like they have clear priorities to work on next year and that they have the resources that they need to do that. And then I think too, just sort of a general sense when we're out in schools, that schools felt like, you know, that we were, you know, professional in conducting the observations, we weren't disruptive during the day. Those would be the two main things. I don't think in a very short-term sense you would see any, you know, change in student achievement, but certainly I would hope that over the next year or two, implementing those recommendations would.
that's really helpful to me, thank you.
Jonathan, you wanna ask?
Yeah, just, so this doesn't have a contract in the packet, but it's an action item. Is that something that's gonna be drawn up, or just where are we on that?
Yeah, so if,
So the item that was attached through Assembly should have the actual language as far as the budget amount.
Yeah, it's
but
got the-
contract itself, I do not have
Yeah, right.
access to that at this time.
Right, so I would just ask that if the board's interested in approving this tonight, that you make it subject to, you know, an appropriate contract, that it meets the approval of the superintendent and board attorney, just, so that, if that's, you know, unless you were planning on bringing it back again, I was thinking that it would be helpful to go ahead and have that since it's not attached to the contract. Okay.
Sarah?
Did you have something?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm glad you asked the contract question, because that was gonna be one of my questions, and I like that phrase about meets the approval of the superintendent and the attorney.
Thank you.
That feels good. Cause also aware that we are getting further and further into the spring and getting into classrooms, you don't wanna go in like June and everybody.
that's right.
I mean, every minute should be learning, clearly, but just being realistic. I just want, I guess it's more of a comment, which is I really like that this also includes, I really love the direct observation. Board, I sent you, like a year and a half ago, I sent you a link to the opportunity myth. I don't know if you remember, but it's really good. So I really am very interested in this idea of using a similar approach. I love that you are getting teacher perspectives. And I love that this is gonna come with that last piece of, okay, so these are our needs. What's the professional development look like? And that is one of the things that you would be providing here, is in places where those needs are something that you have the resources for, that you would be supporting that. Cause that piece about really supporting our teachers feels like a really important part of the puzzle here.
Matthew?
My only comment, I know that you're saying you're coming in on kindergarten, but I would hope that we also take a look at our pre-K and make sure that we're meeting the challenges for them. I know it's a little late in the year, but at some point, if it's still going on at the beginning of next year, I would love to see feedback on our pre-K students coming in and actually our kindergarten students coming in. What resources would they need at the beginning of the year? It's unfortunate that we're almost through the year, but I think it would be important at some point to see how our students coming in prepared.
Anybody else? I just had a couple of questions. One is, could you talk a little bit about how the EC classes would be observed, or what the expectations are for them?
Yeah, so if it is a classroom where students are expected to meet grade level standards, so like mild, moderate, for example, those would be on our list to go observe for sure, and we would be happy. If it's helpful to have like a carve out set of recommendations or trends that we found in those classrooms, we're very helpful to, fine to do that. I do think, I don't know that we would be best positioned in some of like the severe, profound, like self-contained settings, to provide a strong recommendation there.
Okay, yeah, I just wanna make sure we know what the boundaries are.
Yeah.
Cause it doesn't explicitly say, it just says the school, so I do know that the schools do have those cases. The second question is probably more for staff, is, once this is done and all the recommendations, would this become part of each school's, improvement plan? Is that how it would be rolled out and tracked? Similar to what Hillary was asking, not on the success part, but here's the recommendations. Is that gonna roll into the school improvement plan and then be pushed that way, or is there another method that we're thinking?
I mean, we can definitely discuss as we progress through the spring. I do know that with the NC STAR indicators, which kind of drive those school improvement plans, we would certainly look for all schools to have a focus in literacy, because that's our district focus. And I think you're going to hear more tonight in later presentations around just that streamlined alignment. So I would see that. Now, what that language and verbiage looks like, I can't say at this point, but I would definitely look for alignment with those findings and what our next steps of action would be across schools.
Okay, yeah, I just wanna make sure that we're making sure everybody's on the same page of how this is and how we track it, because I do think, when we're talking about making some of these changes, we wanna make sure everybody's using the same method. Hillary?
Another thing, that's been kinda on my mind, and this may be more of a conversation when Amber comes up here later, is how, if you'll be in any of the dual language classrooms, at least in the, English side of that, and, talking about how we could use the recommendations in the Spanish part. Also, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how we work between our Spanish and English curriculums, and I just wanna make sure that, since that is such a valuable program to us, that we're spending time when we're having these conversations, including them in part of it. So, is that something in a classroom space that you would go to?
So, yeah, we would work with Dr. Gammon to sort of organize, exactly those classrooms.
Okay.
The principals would get to weigh in as well, and I think if that's something that's interesting to you, we do have observers who have bilingual experience and are bilingual, so that is absolutely something we could do.
I think that there are some schools in this district that would really benefit from having bilingual, observers. If possible.
So, this has been implemented in, when I was reading your abstract, that it's been implemented in other districts throughout the state. How successful has it been?
So I'd say our biggest project right now is actually in Guilford. We haven't done necessarily a literacy audit in every district that we work with, but in Guilford County Schools, a few years ago, we did a literacy audit, and then we've been helping them implement new curriculum materials in grades K through 2 from the Core Knowledge Foundation. So new reading foundation skills and new reading comprehension curriculum. And so we've been not only helping them with implementation support, but we've actually been doing direct teacher coaching there, so it's actually a pretty large project, which is a little bit different from this. But they've already seen, certainly some improvement with their 3rd grade student achievement, and then internally, state sort of issues notwithstanding with early literacy assessments right now, they are seeing improvements with that, although that's been a little wonky this year with the changes in.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
Well, I'm going to make the motion, I should make that motion, that, we approve the literacy curriculum audit proposal, with the contract, as long as the contract meets the approval of our superintendent and attorney.
Thank you.
Joyful second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
next on our agenda is from the policy committee, motion for policy 6220 for the child nutrition services.
And I apologize in sending this to Tanya, it is lost somewhere in Link as it's not accessible to me or to her, or sorry, not Link, but Assembly. So I have included my notes for you to review, and we will make sure that that gets corrected so it's available for the public to take a look at. So I just wanted to review policy number 6220 is operation of school nutrition services, and it was approved by the Board of Education in June 2017. Currently, the policy states that all schools will participate in the federal national child nutrition programs and will receive commodities donated by the United States Department of Revenue and Agriculture. All federal and state revenues will be accepted and applied to maximize the use of such funds for the purposes of providing nutritional meals to the students at the lowest possible price. The superintendent or designee shall develop procedures as necessary to implement the operational standards established in this policy. Section A talks about the operational standards, and I just want to highlight that this states that the child nutrition services will operate in a manner consistent with the board goals and board policy. This includes that no child will be discriminated against because of race, sex, color, national origin, disability, age, or eligibility of status for free and reduced meals. It also states that child nutrition program funds will be used only for purpose authorized by law, and that the price of meals will be determined in accordance with federal law and will be approved by the board. When looking at B, which covers the meal charges, and this is where the motion was discussed during the policy committee meeting, B states that students who are required to pay for meals are expected to provide payment in a timely manner. The board recognizes, however, that students occasionally may forget or lose their meal money. In the event that a student in elementary or middle school is unable to pay for a meal on that particular day, the student may charge a reimbursable meal. A student carrying a negative balance of $10 in a meal account will not be permitted to accrue additional charges until the negative balance drops below $10. Instead, the student will be served a designated alternate meal provided at no cost to them. Middle school students will receive a voucher that must be paid the following day once they've exceeded their $10 limit, and high school students and adults are not eligible to charge. What I would also state is that parents are expected to pay the full amount charges by the end of the school year, and negative balances will be carried forward to the following school year, and the superintendent shall ensure that the federal nutrition funds are not used to offset the cost of unpaid meals, and that the child nutrition program is reimbursed for bad debt resulting of uncollected student meal charges prior to September 30th each year. So during the policy committee meeting held on February 28, 2020, the committee made a motion for a 60-day waiver period of the policy pertaining to the verbiage contained in section B of the policy for meal charges and designated alternate meal options, while the provisions of the policy are under review. And during this waiver period, what they stated was that students who charge will be allowed to select the meal of their choice during the waiver period. The motion includes keeping a maximum $10 charge limit on student accounts. It will reset all accounts currently above the maximum $10 cap, and it will cancel the debt for all student accounts which were permitted to accrue above the $10 maximum. This will pertain to elementary and middle schools. During the policy committee meeting, the motion to present the waiver to the board was made, and it was to be presented during the next board meeting for approval, with the condition of obtaining financial data information from the Child Nutrition Services Department. So in reviewing, allowing students to select a meal of their choice will cost the district approximately $1 per meal if the meal complies with the consideration of a full meal as stated by the FDA, and that is for their reimbursable full meal price adjustments. So looking at the financial impact of the motion of the 60-day waiver period, including allowing students to select the meal of their choice and covering the balances that exceed the $10 maximum, it looks like that cost for 60 days will be approximately $2,307. The impact is based on the number of meals served once the student account exceeds $10, and this expenditure will be added to the end of the year unpaid student account charges as billed to the district, which is expected to total approximately $5,000 with this addition. And of course, the expenditure amount will be absorbed by the district's local budget and it will be dependent upon how many students decide to charge once this motion is passed.
I would just add that it is a waiver of policy, so it's a 2/3 vote, but there's 6 members here, so it's basically a majority tonight. 4 members would carry the vote.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, there's
Six-
multiple. Go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead. There's
well, go
multiple. No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
You may have something that they hadn't heard since you were on the.
I'm sorry,
policy
to know
committee.
anybody else. 60 days won't get us to the end of the school year, will it? Do we need it to be 90-day waiver? 'Cause it's June, right?
June is, yes. Yeah, so it would be 90.
Yeah, 60 days won't get you.
It won't get you there.
I mean, if you're trying to do the end of the school year, I would recommend just saying to the end of, to the
Okay.
end of, that's what the
Yeah.
goal.
I mean, I think the idea was that it would give us time to assess and regroup for next school year.
Yes. Go ahead. Did you have?
Just my other comment is that I'm still worried that high school students aren't eating, and would love to do something about that today, but I'm not exactly sure. I'd be open to suggestions.
Sarah?
So, and I wasn't in the policy meeting, so thank you for humoring this. I don't understand that a student carrying a negative balance of $10 will not be permitted to accrue additional charges. And then also, middle school students will receive a voucher that must be paid the next day. I didn't understand what that middle school part in particular means.
So the way it works today is at elementary, you can go up to $10 and then you can get alternate meals.
Yeah.
But at middle school, when you get to $10, the way the policy's written is you get a voucher and you have to pay the voucher back and then you can get another voucher, but it stops essentially after the voucher.
But
There's no meals.
the charges, no, you have to pay the voucher, so the charges don't stop. So at elementary, you can get a free alternate meal.
Yes.
And at
Middle school, you do not,
You do not.
after the
So
voucher.
you get the regular meal, but then you have to pay it back later.
And you have to carry a voucher around.
And you have to carry it out. And in high school, you can't charge them.
Can't charge any.
Oh.
There's no $10 item there.
Okay.
Would this do anything to the voucher piece? I'm just trying to understand.
This would affect, it's essentially doing
Your
away with the
waiver would
voucher.
essentially eliminate the voucher piece, and all
Eliminate the
students would have
voucher,
the option.
okay. And it would eliminate essentially the idea of an alternate meal, right, for during this time period?
Yes.
The student would be able to get whatever meal anybody else gets. Okay, just one.
Can you just confirm, I have been told this, but my understanding is that high school, the counselors do have the waivers that they can give out to students if they so choose.
High school, I didn't think, per policy, didn't have a waiver.
Okay, I had heard they had some
I
that they-
can't confirm or deny that, I don't
Okay.
know, but according to our policy, high
said-
school
she
doesn't have a
said-
waiver.
Yeah,
Sharita said,
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
that. I would need someone here from child nutrition to confirm.
yeah, Sharita said.
no?
No, they don't have waivers, but they have food that they can give
They have
students to
food.
Yeah, I heard
eat, but they don't
snacks.
have waivers to give them for lunch.
Right.
Okay.
And this was to try to, this is the board's decision, but it was to try to put all the schools on the same footing, because the policy was indicating that students should not be allowed to accrue more than $10. So the extent that any school allowed that, the idea is that that would have been against policy, and so that it's to put all the schools back at the $10, which is per policy.
And to answer your question, they do not give waivers, but if there is accrual of money via Food Angels, who
Yes.
donate money, then people would be allowed to take a free meal. It wouldn't necessarily be a charge because money had been donated, but they don't necessarily do vouchers.
Matthew, did you have a question?
My only was clarification. The, on B, bullet 3, superintendent shall ensure that federal child nutrition funds are not used to offset unpaid meals. So if we're giving the children an opportunity, which I agree with doing away with the alternative meal, which means there's gonna be days that it's a USDA funded meal, how are we gonna keep up with that and make sure that we're not using the federal funds for this?
It would be charged and applied to the local budget. So it
Local
would be
budget.
charged and then they would charge the school district's local budget at the end of the year.
And Rhonda, are we able to accommodate this cost? Are we able to accommodate this cost with local money?
Yes, we are, based upon the estimate that she has provided, yes.
Now, of course, it'll adjust if it's a 90-day period. We'll have to run those numbers.
Sarah?
Well, I support the idea of spending some time looking more deeply at all of this. I was looking at the federal government also has community eligibility, and we have several schools that qualify for community eligibility. On their list, it looked like Central, Adjourn and Partnership. Now, I think that there's a balance. You have to do a bunch of math to figure out if it's worth it. Community eligibility basically means the whole school
Right.
gets free lunch. But it's more complicated than that and may not make financial sense, but I do think the idea of taking some time and looking at all of the options and all of how it's funded, makes sense.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I just wonder if we wanna do anything about high school students. I mean, are we gonna allow them the same thing that we're offering to middle school and elementary school?
Well,
I'm just asking.
okay, well, that's not, Rhonda didn't research that.
Right,
So we
right.
have, I don't think we could do that tonight, but point well taken, and perhaps we can come back. But
Right.
we've done the numbers for what we have in front of us. And I wouldn't want to put Rhonda on the spot to have her scurrying around trying to get the numbers for high school tonight.
Let's bring that specific part back,
Okay.
if you're okay with that.
Yep.
Right, do we have a motion to do this to the end of the school year?
Motion so moved.
And that includes a waiver of policy.
Waiver of policy.
I was like,
That is so easy.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. All right, now we come to the information. First item is the new Orange County Schools website.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent. Thank you very much for allowing me to come here to speak to you about the launch of our new web management system. My name is Joshua Hunt, and I am the web manager here at Orange County Schools. What I'd like to do is briefly take you back to kind of where we came from and show you the challenges that we face and solutions that we put forward, and then where we're going from there, and give you a better understanding of what we're doing with our launch of this new site. And then after that, if we have a little bit of time, I can show you the new site, show you a few of the specifics about it, take some questions, and then we'll go from there. So, back in about 2013, when I came to Orange County Schools, this is what our website looked like. I was brought on to fix a bunch of different things, and I just wanted to list a few of them that we've kind of had ongoing issues with, and probably will continue, and that's really what I really talk about. This website was not ADA compliant, and what I mean by ADA, I mean Americans with Disabilities Act, which was something passed back in the 1990s, and specifically addressed people who have a visual impairment or visual disability, who cannot see a website and therefore are using what's called a screen reader. And so that will read the information to them. And one of the major problems is that there's a lot of stuff that goes into the code of a website that needs to be placed in the appropriate spot in order for that information to be understood, because it literally reads it from the top to bottom, left to right, and there's certain tags, like a heading tag, paragraph tags, that denote what that particular thing is, and that tells the person, okay, what this information is that they're getting. You also have information that's associated with an image, like the image at the top there. It would have a description of what that image is, and so that description will be read to the person trying to figure out what the website is all about. Okay, this website did not have a whole lot of ADA compliance along with it, as did not very many websites at the time. Okay, this was kind of something that was still being worked out and continues to be worked out. This website was also not mobile friendly. So at the time, there was a big thing in web design called responsive web design. And so because everyone was now using websites on a tablet or a mobile phone, you guys all have your tablets here, you know that you need to have a website respond to the particular size of the devices you use to read it. And this one did not. In fact, what you can see was this, it just shrunk down. And then you'd have to kind of go in there and use your fingers and open it up and kind of scroll around and try to figure out what it said and where to find the link. And that's just not user friendly. It was very confusing in its organization, which a lot of governmental sites can be, especially school sites. And because of that, it made it difficult to navigate. And so that sort of herring led to a lot of people pulling out the hair when they're trying to find something. And then finally, there was inconsistency across the templates. Each site had its own sort of design, okay? And that did not make for a good user experience for any parents who had a child in elementary school, middle school, and high school, because they would have to look in different places to find, you know, different things. And sometimes they're there, sometimes they weren't. So let me just give you a look at some of those different websites to give you an idea what that means. This was Pathways Elementary back in 2013. This was a Google site it was made with. This was the template that they were using. Uniquely different than Gravely Hill Middle School, which had a completely different template. I think this one was actually hand-coded. Okay. One thing also to note with the Americans with Disabilities Act is contrast with the font and the background colors. Some colors really don't work out well, some do, so that's kind of a conscious choice you need to make to help people see or read what's going on. Cedar Ridge, again, had a different template. So the solution that we put forward were creating a flexible framework to respond to screen size, streamlining the navigation and organization of the website, making it more ADA compliant, and then providing consistency across all sites. So to do this, what we did was we used what's called a content management system. It's called Drupal. It's similar to WordPress or Squarespace if anyone's ever made their own website. Okay, it's open source. You go ahead and you grab the code, you type it up, design it, and you're on your way. So this is the site as it is now. This is what you would see on a laptop. This is what you would see on a tablet. And this is what you'd see on a phone or smaller mobile device. So we addressed the first issue, which was responsive design, making it able to fit all devices. We addressed consistency.
Ooh, wow. She's
So
Kelly's a star. You're a star, Kelly.
Cedar Ridge, all of the templates we used were the same template. The template was actually put forth by Stanford University, and so we used theirs, and it was very useful for quite some time. But because websites are always changing, we're always finding new challenges, and thus we have to come up with new solutions, right? So again, there is an increased need for ADA compliance, doing better ADA compliance. Again, it's with a lot of these old sites and some of these content management systems in which you're using open source code, it's hard to find a lot of these issues. It's hard to make sure you're putting in information for a picture. It's hard to make sure that the contrast is the way it is, or go in and actually change it, because a lot of that is code-based, rather than kind of going in and dragging and dropping like a lot of stuff is now, okay? So that also makes it harder for individual webmasters to maintain sites. So I can go in and do stuff because I have a lot of experience on the back end of things, but there's people in different schools, they're not web designers. They have a little bit of experience, they can kind of get in, but then it becomes difficult to update things, to find things, to navigate through these things. And so that's something we have to consider. It's not just the people in the public, you know, in our families that we're helping out, but it's our own people that we got to help out as well. We also need to make a better search function. I know that the search function we have right now, a lot of people are still pulling their hair out. I do empathize and understand, constantly trying to make it better. And with this new upgrade, it should get a lot better for you. We also have greater technical support and automatic updates. As I mentioned, the system we're using is Drupal, it's open source, so the updates that we're making, I'm making them. Or at least I'm making them with our hosting platform. And sometimes there's late evenings where I'm kind of testing something, making sure it's good. Okay, let's go ahead and implement this, make the code go through. And that takes a lot of time away from then just making sure everything else is set. So you're kind of in two worlds here, and so to have someone else take on that role is a huge support. And Blackboard is going to push updates. They're going to give us new templates if we want. So the ability to kind of have that at hand if we need it is really good. And then we also gain an extra mass communication system because the website is of critical importance to put out information to our families, right? But it's not the only way to do it. We also have social media, Blackboard Connect calls, text messages, et cetera, et cetera. So if we could find a way to combine all of that into one, that would be wonderful. And that we have. So what we've done is we partnered with Blackboard Web Management Systems. Blackboard is a global company. They are, I think, the industry standard for education and online education. Many universities are using, Arizona State, where I went, is using Blackboard. I took my online classes with them. Almost every school system in the South is adopting Blackboard. To our neighbors, Wake, Chapel Hill, Durham, all using Blackboard. The reason they use them, I think, is because they are forward thinking. They really do kind of ask themselves, what do schools need and how can we address it? There's a lot of questions I have and some questions people have asked me, and I've actually sent emails to Blackboard and they've answered those questions, and they said, we've got stuff coming down the pipe, hold on, we'll address it. Or they say, hey, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna write this down, and I know there's someone over there that's probably gonna figure out a way to do it. So I really do like that sort of communication and back and forth and entrepreneurship that they have going on. They have an ADA compliance monitoring system. So when I go into the actual site and when any individual webmaster goes into their site, I can see real time what kind of issues that we have for ADA compliance. So it will tell me, okay, you have so many issues right now that you need to address. It will then take me to the issue, so I don't actually have to search for it. I can actually go right to where it is, it'll give me a link, I can go to it, find out what it is, and then I can fix it. Okay? That's wonderful. It saves so much time and streamlines that process of just fixing things and making sure that it's up to date. We have a mass communication system that comes along with it. So along with our web management system, we will be getting an update to the Blackboard Connect system. And that's something that Ryan Miller is going to be working along with Blackboard to get set up. And then they're going to test that out. When it's ready to go, it should be a lot easier for people to make these phone calls and text messages and whatnot. We also have a social media manager that kind of goes along with it. So that now, and this is something that a lot of principals had asked me, they said, can I get something that allows me to craft a message, send it to Twitter, send it to Facebook, send it to the website, and then send it to Blackboard Connect all at once? And yes, you can now. You can do that all at once. So then it saves them a lot of time and not having to rely on 5 different people who have access to 5 different these social media accounts and getting something out there. You can just do it all at once. We also have an updated alert system too. So if you've seen something at Wake County or Durham, where you have a nice box that pops up and it provides them with a message and then a button that says, okay, I got it, so that you know, hey, I clicked on it in order to go then and look through the site. So we will also have that, which should probably come in handy real soon.
Don't say that.
We have kindergarten enrollment coming up. We have all sorts of
Oh,
things.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There's all sorts of alerts.
You did good, Josh.
Look at your graduation.
Right?
Yearbook.
We have a standardized template. I'll show you that in a moment. All of the school sites look the same. They're all organized the same. And again, I want to stress that it's a we process. I've been working with Dr. Felder, all the different departments, different people in schools, and to really try to fix all the things that we've heard thus far. And I really would like to stress that it's important that I get more information. We need to get this information so we can find out what's working and what's not, and that way we can address that stuff. It's going to be easier to use for those people at the individual schools. I've already got a lot of positive feedback from principals and individual web managers who are saying, man, thank you so much. This is so much easier to manage. I don't have to deal with sizing an image or this, that, and the other thing. They can just get in there and put in information, and they're good to go. And then again, like I said, a more reliable search function to make the process that much easier. It's trying to connect to the next slide, so let's just do this. Okay. So, our next steps is, after tonight, we are gonna put a message to the community. I'm sorry, let me step back. We're gonna put a message to staff, actually. Let the staff know that, hey, the new website is coming out, this is when it's launching, these are the things that we're gonna show off, and get them prepared. From there, what we're going to do is launch the website on March 27th. We'll also have a message going out to community members before then. We'll do a little social media campaign to get people excited and kind of expect what's coming on. And then March 27th we'll launch. And after that, we'll have some staff trainings. We do have Blackboard who will come in and do one-on-one trainings. And we can actually specify exactly what we want them to teach. And so we're gonna kind of wait till we launch, talk to our web managers, see what they need help on, and then we can actually have them come in and address those specifically. And then we will have ongoing updates. We've been working with Forthright Advising about doing a social media campaign to just kind of do some shout outs and highlights on the new system. And just saying, hey, look what this is, look where we find this, hey, check this out. And just really try to build more engagement with the community and drive them to the website a lot more, help them find what they need to find. So if you just give me a minute, let me go ahead and show you the new one. I'll walk you around a little bit. I can also share this link out to all the board members if you'd like to go ahead and look at it and kind of cruise it on your own and give me feedback that you like.
Yes, please.
So this is, if our internet's working. Looks like the internet's actually not working.
That's your
You
all-time
should
demo.
So that's unfortunate.
Oh, that's cute.
So let me do this, and I can just talk about it from right here.
Okay.
So, this is the new website. I'd like to point out that we did not drastically change the template because people are used to finding things, and so we didn't want to just change it all up so that now they have to go ahead and learn where things are again. So the organization and structure is very similar. All the things that people are looking for, they're still there. They just should be a lot easier to find. What I'm going to do actually, is I'm glad we're on this page, I'm going to try to implement more icons. So that is now going to be an anchor for people to find certain things. And I've shared this out to all the other webmasters too, so they can kind of use these as well and start to implement them in their own sites. We have a lot more real estate in terms of sending people to places. We have these main links up here. We have these down here, which are all based on Google Analytics that tell us people are going to calendars, meals, transportation. That's the things that they're looking for, so we want to put them up front. And then we'll also have these side navigation bars down here. We have our translation feature right here.
This is huge.
It's provided by Google Translate, because the internet is not working. Sorry, cannot translate it for you now, but what it will do is it gives us the drop down for all of these different languages, allows you to choose the language, it then converts all the text on that site into that language. I actually sat down with Sandra Lefko and had her look at it, and she was very pleased with it. So I think that's gonna be a nice function. It's right there up at the top, right in front, so people can find it.
Approximately how many languages?
50 plus.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is, let's see if it drops down. Okay, good. We can easily then go to different schools. This drop-down menu lets you just click on it and then pick one you wanna go to. So again, I think it would be a lot easier to navigate and get to these different things and find all these different things. So again, I will share this link out with you, and so when you get to an internet that's working, you can go ahead and peruse it in the future. But do you have any questions for me? I know I went through this fast, but I know it's getting late, so I wanted to kind of get in and out and answer questions when I could.
Any questions from any board members?
I just want to say that I'm excited you're back, and this is awesome, and I'm so excited that it's gonna be available in many languages, and the consistency across schools is cool, and access to all the schools from one place is really great, I think, for parents who have kids in multiple locations, and I'm just really pleased and excited for it to roll out, so thanks.
And I like the whole algorithm thing that, I've just learned about it, but, it's great to, it's like, but, that what people search for most.
Yes.
And so, you have them right there in front of our faces.
We will have Google Analytics, and it does have.
Google Analytics, yeah.
Well, it has its own analytics system too, so
Oh, really?
we can double up and get a lot of data on where where people are going, where they're clicked into, and that gives us a ton of feedback from each one.
Oh, yeah, because you wanna know what people are looking for.
Absolutely.
Sarah?
Well, I also wanted to say, I'm excited about, the things that Blackboard offers that then will free up your time to be more focused on like the overall quality of the experience and whether people can find what they need and that kind of thing, rather than like coding little changes, like having to search for the thing you were saying about ADA compliance, and needing to spend time sort of searching for that, so it's exciting.
All right, anybody else? All right.
You're done.
So will the new site allow, does it do web crawling to do 404 detections?
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. You knew I wouldn't get away with that accent technical question. The other one is, I've mentioned this a few times, and I'd really love to see a menu at the top that says equity, and you can click on it, and you can get to everything we're doing for equity, versus having to find out where it is in our menu system.
So make it more upfront.
Yeah, like home equity or home district, one of the top buttons that people don't have to look for it. They get there and go, oh, equity, and they can see everything we're doing. And that's all the questions I have.
Mine, is there gonna be a contract ultimately with this?
We do have a contract.
It's already in place, or,
Yes.
okay, good, that's, and then the second thing is, for me, and people may access this differently and may like the way it works. For me, when I go to the policy right now, and there's the search option, when you search it, it doesn't just search policies, it's a much broader search that's almost like an internet search or all the way through the website. And that may be good, like if you wanted to do a word search right on the front of it, but when you get into policy and you go to the search, it would be great if it was just the policies, and it would just be a search that's just, and then it pulls up, here's 4 policies with that word in it. Cause I've just found, like, when I go to the School Boards Association site, you know, for policies that they host, if I go to that one and I hit it's boom, here's 4 policies that cover it, and I can just search so much faster and get to the applicable policies. I don't know how hard that is, and people may have different user appetites, but that's a suggestion for me anyway.
Indirect research is what he's asking for versus content search of website.
I think, off the top of my head, there's a way to do 2 search engines. A search engine, and to not delve into the technicalities of this evening, is going to search the URL, so the domain name, orangecountyfirst.com,
Exactly.
Right.
and then any folder that's attached to that. So you can go in and designate, okay, orangecountyfirst.com / policies, or where these things are gonna be found. The organization of this one's gonna be a little different, because it's not set up as a traditional website would be, where you have that traditional file structure.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow I will actually reach out to them and ask them, is this something we can do in regards to giving someone more granular control over just this area of policy, and then kind of eliminating everything
And I
else?
really, it's like when you get to policy, so I'm on board policy right now, I've pulled it up, and there's a big line that says search, and right under it, there's a big question, you know, but when I put in there, again, it's not the granular, here's the policies, boom, boom, boom. And if it's not doable, it's not, but I thought I'd raise it.
I
so.
agree. It would
He
be
literally
incredibly
wants to
helpful.
search the files, just the files, no external sites.
Right.
So,
Correct.
yeah, I just wanna make sure
I
it's
appreciate
easy to
you help
understand,
translating.
Translate that for tech speed.
Yeah, I know, I just appreciate it, yes.
There's, to make a long story short, there's some issues that go along with that, and I have some
Mhm.
solutions for that. It might be good to sit down and talk about them at a different time.
No, absolutely, just
Yeah.
raising it,
Tell
getting it
you
out
what
there.
those are, and then you can kind of make a decision from there. You can certainly, I think there are things that can make your life easier, so I'll wait and you can kind of sit down and I can tell you what I think those are.
All right, anything else from anyone?
Thank
Thank you.
you, Josh. Good job.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're glad to have you back.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we have the First Responders Pre-K program at Pathways Elementary, and we have several people here, several guests, please come in.
Yeah.
Everybody, please come in.
We have a lot.
Yes. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You? Yeah, gotta do that.
COVID-19.
Gotta do that, I know it, that's right.
Wow.
The big cheese.
Wow.
The big cheese. I know.
Yeah, we can pull that over.
Thank you. Get a good picture, because I was trying to, hey, I want to see it. Hey, how you doing? Yep. Somebody's recording you as you take it.
All right.
All right, good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Felder, and community. I'm honored to welcome Ms. Megan Monteith and Mrs. Kelly Parks. Ms. Kelly Parks is assistant principal at Pathways Elementary School. We saw her picture earlier. Ms. Megan Monteith is lead teacher in our exceptional children's pre-K program at Pathways Elementary School. They are here to share an update on the First Responders Trust Program. The First Responders Trust Program is a joint program between Pathways Elementary School's exceptional children's pre-K setting and local first responders. The program aims to create safety awareness and form natural community partnerships. So please welcome Ms. Monteith as well as Mrs. Parks.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you very much, including pre-K and so many things. That means a lot. That means a lot to me. Wow, you guys are awesome. Thank you. So you guys, that's kind of a little bit of what the program is about. The reason I started this idea was I was working with children with severe autism, and a parent, not the smokehouse, what's it called? What do you?
The fire safety house.
Thank you, the fire safety house. These nice, the Orangeburg Fire Department had brought it out to Pathways, and they were letting the older grades go through and figure out ways to get out of a house in emergency. And I had a parent say, let's go take my daughter over there and watch them try to get her out. And I went, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. But a lot of these kids don't have the same responses as we do to danger, and they are the kids that are going to run back into a dangerous situation because they don't fear, they don't have the same safety awareness as we do. And with kids like this that are nonverbal, they're not gonna respond when they're yelling for a kid. They're not going to be the ones that are gonna come out of the closet. So it kind of puts them in an unsafe predicament that could not only hurt them, but also hurt some of our responders trying to go after them. So I thought, that's, oh, you're leaving me. Yeah, you gotta do that part. That's not mine. So what I thought was, how can we remedy that? What can we do to help these kids understand that these guys and women are here to protect us? And they might have scary uniforms on, and they might have radios that make a lot of noise, and they might have a lot of lights, but they're here for us. And so I got this crazy idea that I could get some first responders to come into my class and just hang out, just chill. Some of them join in the curriculum. I've had some actually join in circle time and sing and participate. They also do presentations with their equipment and things like that. So it's been great because they have made a difference, and I promised I would only make one of them talk, so I'm not gonna make any of them talk, but we have right now 4 entities here of the record. I have 7 different entities that come into the classroom. Click what? Okay, connected with a lot of these guys was through the Safe Kids of Orange County. We had talked about, you know, possibly having a few people come out, and thanks to Will also made some contacts with some people. And right now we have our North Carolina Highway Patrol. They're also represented right now. We have our Orange Rural Fire Department. We have our Orange County Sheriff's Office. And we have our EMS that is here. And so who's not here is Hillsborough Police Department and UNC. We have a UNC burn nurse that actually comes out. She'll be coming in tomorrow to the class. And also the North Carolina Wildlife Officer. So it is really cool to look and see how some kids connect with some of these fine humans and how they connect with other ones. As you can see these collages going around, some of you'll recognize some faces in here on those collages, which is pretty cool. So with that, so now we're working on our kids and having our kids build a trusting relationship with people in uniform. Then also I thought, how can I help our first responders use a tool to help interact with them during an emergency situation? So I came up with a sensory bag, and at this point in time I've created 20 of them to provide Orange Rural Fire Department, EMS, Orange County Sheriff's Office, and Hillsborough PD with 4 each. And we're all still right now, it's all in the works of talking about how we can implement these, how they can be used, Highway Patrol too, sorry. And what we can do as a community together. So with these bags, and I can pass this around too, we have, another thing that we liked in EMS is that these not only can be used for children, but they could also be used for adults. So not only are we looking at like nonverbal people with special needs, you're also looking at people with Alzheimer's and things like that, that this could also help, which is another growing thing in there. So the bag, it also has a tag on it that's gonna describe everything that's in it. And so I have headphones, I'll pass them around. These are for, you know, the sensory to hearing and noise. So if they come across somebody that can't handle the loud noise and the chaos, they want to try to eliminate that. I think one of the examples I used when Highway Patrol was in is I was like, can you hear that buzzing? And of course, it's not something you and I recognize, but those lights, the fluorescent lights, sounds like a stereo that's on max to some kids, and they don't understand it. So that's something that we can work with. Then sunglasses to help shield the flashing lights or just any kind of light. I also thought about, you know, people with seizure disorders if the light bothers them in any way. And then a sweet little teddy bear. Now that can be used for people that need something to squeeze, something to snuggle, whatever we need to do with that. Fidget toys. So this might also, we might have to look at this again, and depending on our children, we might not be able to use that for children. That might have to be adult only because of small pieces. So that's something that we will look into as a team. And then probably the most important piece of the whole kit, and I have at least 2 of them, they can pass it on. These are communication boards. The communication boards are designed by myself and our speech therapist, Michelle DiConcilio. We designed them to be very basic, very simple. They have 2 languages on them at this point. They are to help these guys in a situation be able to communicate, very basic needs. We're all kind of working together as a team. We've already came up with some other ideas that we want to add to these. Also, forms to be able to put them on the computers. So if EMS is involved, they can also kind of let it go on to the hospital. All of this stuff could go with the patient to the hospital and be with them, so it wouldn't be like, sorry, you got those. But, it's hopefully gonna, it's gonna do several things in our community, in our schools. I really hope that it pulls all of us together and all of us working together so that we can make sure that our children with special needs in Orange County we know that they're in the safest hands and that we've done everything we possibly can to make sure that they're, taken care of. So, I have some, how's it working? Well, I have a parent with me, Emily Ellis. She has, her son is in several of those pictures. He's been with me for 3 years. He is wonderful, and he has had some very awesome experiences with several of these folks in here. But I'm gonna let you tell his story real quick and how they helped. So you can stay wherever you want to, or you can sit.
So Owen, he's 5, and he is a special needs student in Megan's class. Well, he's nonverbal and has a history of seizures. So at home, he's been he's had interaction with, EMT and with firefighters, and also with paramedics, the occasional ride to the hospital for his seizures. But with this first responders program, he's just, he's has more like one-on-one interaction with them. What am I trying to say? He engages with them. He'll sit in a lap while they read to him and different kinds of things like that. So he's really flourished from where he's seen them at the house, and then he's real, excited about seeing a fire truck going down the street or an ambulance going down the street. So this program is just an amazing program, and I would recommend it for, any pre-K, or at least with the EC classrooms in the county schools. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
And then I wanna take it from first responders side of it and how it's helping them with, this is Katie Benedict, and she is a community paramedic.
I'm one of the community paramedics for Orange County Emergency Services. I've been going to Miss Monteith's class for a couple of months now to interact with those kids. They are phenomenal kids. When she presented this idea of these sensory bags for us to have, I thought it was one of the best ideas I've ever heard. Because we interact with these kids in really high stressful situations. We never know how they're going to react. We don't know what's normal for them. We don't know how do we communicate with them. And really, sometimes it's a very rapid guessing game. Having the ability to have some way to communicate a standard across the board that can be implemented, having a way of mitigating those reactions that they may get to lights and sirens, even though we can turn them down, we can't always turn them down. Just being able to have that way is gonna be the best thing that we can do for those kids. It's gonna turn a very serious situation with possible dangerous consequences into something where we're really gonna benefit. And in the future, if they have another incident with EMS or fire or law enforcement, they're gonna be able to come and say, that time wasn't bad. I know I can trust them, I know I can go to them. And then they won't run back into that fire scene, and they'll come to us when they need us. So I'm very excited about having the ability to pass this along to my fellow first responders.
Great. Thank you, Katie. You're welcome. Let's see. Do it right.
Ooh, you did it.
Yes. So I also, how does this come into our curriculum? How is this instructional time? How are we not losing that? Well, with pre-K, we have the North Carolina Foundations for Early Learning and Development, and you'll see those are kind of coded. I do have those spelled out. If you would like to see them, I could provide those for you. I figured that would probably be but those are all the different areas that, that this program actually touches on. So our children are still experiencing instructional time with these guys. So we're not losing anything with the time that they are here. I do ask, like I said, we have 7 different entities. So I ask that they come once every 7 weeks and they spend 30 minutes in my classroom. I don't know one of them that stays for just 30 minutes. I'll tell you that.
That's great.
And it's super cool. It is just the coolest thing ever, We've had our highway patrol gentleman that comes to our classroom. We've had him go out on the playground with us, hang out on the slides. He gets done and plays with Play-Doh. So it is kind of just an amazing thing to see for these kids. One of the things that we've talked about doing is growing this program through our separate setting programs. And this is something we're gonna have to probably form some kind of committee that's going to involve all of us as a community to try to figure that out, because that's big. But if I can start small with that, and I can use the kids in the separate setting and pathways, so that we can start as the pre-K, the foundation, building that trusting relationship, not only with us as the educators, but with the first responders that they may encounter in their lives. So, does anybody have any questions?
I would like to share something if you don't mind. So I know this is something that seems very natural to us as educators, because we are the front lines of this every single day. And if you have a child with special needs, this is your everyday, this is your life. But for everybody, this is not their reality. And so we're hoping to train and partner with the community so it becomes people's reality to be more sensitive and to just be more understanding of what someone else may be going through, especially in a crisis. And they say often, you know, all the parents, I'll just go snatch them up. Sometimes these kids are too big. I can't. You could get hurt. I can't just pick them up and carry them out. But also they say, well, what if the parent would know what to do? If the parent's the one in distress, then they can't help you.
And one of my families said they have a nonverbal child that speaks only with a pod that's similar to the communication board. And she said, the one thing that I want my daughter to be able to do is to be able to communicate. Because if something happens to me and these guys come in, nobody's gonna be able to, you know, it's just not gonna happen. So that's like, those are some of the things. I had one that wants to continue this program over the summer. And her thing is, I just want my son to know who I am. And those are all very difficult, very, very difficult things. And with that particular child, I'll have to give it to our wildlife officer. She came to see us last week and she said, I am not gonna be able to bring my fur pelts, which is usually what gets the kids, cause they wanna touch those and they're different tech, you know, and I said, that's okay, just come, you can hang out, read a book, do what, you know, and she said, oh, okay, well, so she brings in, she's got fishing books. She's like, they're not really gonna pay attention, so she put them down, nobody touched them. Next day, this particular kid that picked one of the books up and just is reading it all day. That's all he did all day. I even tasted it, you know, I mean, it was like, and so I sent her a picture of it later, and she was like, you know, and it's those kind of things that we as adults, even as educators, we don't think about. Those are the small things that these kids really get excited about. I will give Fire one thing. I won't make them talk, but they did, you know, they bring in their suits and they suit up. And they let the kids, if you saw those pictures, they let them touch the masks. They let them get very close, which is huge for these kids. Because they're the scariest, definitely. But one of the cool things is they always bring in plastic fire hats. So you might see in our principal's offices, they all have pink fire hats now. But one of the kids was, they were messing with their hat, and the kid went over and picked up the pile of hats and put them on his head and walked around with them. And so that correlation is huge, and those are the things. They're baby steps, and they're beautiful baby steps. So that's where we want to go with this. Does anyone have any questions?
Sarah?
It wasn't a question.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a comment, and I was trying to figure out if I could say it without like crying. So I'm gonna try. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for noticing this and thinking of it and bringing it to life. This could save kids' lives. And thank you all for being a part of it too. Dr. Felder, you talk a lot about it takes a village. It takes this is what that is, y'all. Thank you. I didn't. Okay.
This little simple card here, I can see these start being in a lot of the transport vehicles, just coming in because the children are gonna be familiar with it. And this is opening a door to that child to reach out. This is wonderful, for the way that you've developed this. It's impressive.
Thank you very much. So one of the things that we're gonna work on, we're gonna look at as a team, because we've already talked about some things that we've noticed, and we're gonna get everybody involved in this. There may be adjustments, but what I wanna make sure is that everybody has the same card. So if Highway Patrol comes up on an unfortunate accident, and they're talking to the kid, and they end up with EMS, they're all gonna be communicating on the same level, on the same board. And there's not gonna be a drop in communication. That's the biggest thing, is that I wanna make sure that we're all good. We all have the same level that we can help our kids.
Pillar?
You're a rock star. Thanks for doing this. And just as a side note, I feel like my 7-year-old, who is quite verbal, would also benefit from that. Cause I know when he's upset, he might cry on my shoulder, but he won't talk for half an hour. And so these are tools that can be used with neurotypical kids and people too. So I just think it's such a good example of how when we help the most marginalized people, it can help everyone. And I think that it's just such a beautiful program, and I'm so thankful to all of you for being here tonight.
So along those lines, this program is like flipping CIT around. Crisis intervention training taught us how to recognize what these children and young adults and even adults are going through. This allows them to understand us. And it's really important because, as we all know, whether you're a grown-up or whether you're a child, you cannot build trust in crisis. You have to have already been there. And that's what she's providing us an opportunity to do. We're really invested in this with her. We're really excited about being part of it. I don't know of another time we've had this many of us agree just right off the bat.
No.
So thank you for hearing us out.
Y'all, I can't even believe that, I just kept watching y'all come in and just going, oh my God. Oh. And I'm sorry, I was texting over here, but I'm trying to figure out who's here and where they are. And we also have, there's somebody out there, but she's not gonna come in. It's a Durham, a parent and also a Durham police officer who's in full support of this.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so.
Come on in.
I know.
Come on in.
We like Durham, although there's a virus on your computer system.
Let's go, let's go.
Oh, you're getting up.
Thank you. All right.
But I'm glad to end this the meeting on, you guys have been doing all this policy stuff. I'm glad to end it on a happy note.
Oh, we got more.
Almost.
We got more. But
Yeah, we got one more.
I just wanted to say that, Megan, when we first talked about this, and, I made a few calls, I'll say that, but I didn't have to convince anybody. I mean, they were, where do I go? And just seeing everybody here, it speaks volumes for y'all's commitment to our school. I mean, here we are on a Monday night, late, and y'all are taking time out to just support this. It speaks volumes, and we appreciate your service to the school, our community, and your ongoing support. And I can't thank y'all enough for what y'all are doing for us.
They need a round.
So then, of course, we will be talking about how we can make these sensory bags with each other and tying in the schools, because I think that'll be huge too, to represent. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you all. And it does take a village. Thank all of you for coming.
Thank you, Sheriff, for coming out.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have a safe night.
Oh, yeah.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Grandpa. While they're going out, tell them it's going to a meeting in Raleigh on Thursday. I've gotten the news. Yeah, because they're gonna introduce a new portal for board assistants and, well, maybe next time. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe next time. All right.
Right, now we have the superintendent's proposed budget and
That's
company.
right. Maybe I have to call you.
Okay, so, alright. So greetings, board. Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 school year. Let me begin by saying that everyone standing here tonight is committed to Orange County Schools' priorities of excellence, equity, and access, which are directly reflected in the 2020-2021 budget. To demonstrate our commitment, we are taking a group approach to framing our major budget priorities for the upcoming school year. Each of these staff will be introduced or will introduce themselves during their part of the presentation. We ask that you hold your comments and questions until the end of the presentation. You've been provided with a note-taking handout that looks like this. It's on your table. So hopefully that will aid you in holding your questions and comments. And again, that should allow you to capture everything there. So thank you.
I think we have one board member that is not,
Oh.
it was sitting.
Orange folder.
Here's one.
Here, you take this one. No worries. All right. So, as shared with you at the February 10th board meeting, there are 3 areas that our data are telling us we need to focus on for next school year. They are literacy, climate and culture, and stakeholder engagement. The first area is literacy. And so we know that literacy is more than a skill or habit or understanding. It is the ability to read, write, listen, speak, and think critically, all of which are absolutely necessary to fully engage in our democracy. Therefore, literacy must not be viewed as a subject to be taught. Rather, it should be viewed as a civil right that we must provide to all of our students. The second area of focus is on climate and culture. And school climate is the feel of the school, it's the school's attitude, the behaviors and points of view exhibited and experienced by students, teachers, and other stakeholders. A school's climate shows how students feel about being in school. It also shapes a student's learning and a student's development. School culture is the way things are done in a school, the personality of a school. A school's culture is always at work, either helping or hindering learning. It influences every decision and action in a school, from the leadership style of the principal to the way teachers choose curriculum materials and interact with students. And third would be our focus on stakeholder engagement. And simply stated, stakeholder engagement is considered vital to the success and improvement of a school district. So it is not to be minimized in any way, shape, or form. Strong and effective stakeholder engagement can improve outcomes for students. And lastly, equity. So equity, as you know, is ensuring that all students receive what they need to succeed. It is the overarching and overriding variable that will guide all work in the district. The Equity Task Force reminded us of the definition of equity as outlined in our policy 1030 at the board's February 24th meeting. But it stands repeating here. So according to our policy on equity, equity focuses on each and every student. So that means all students. It recognizes and removes barriers to access. It means it requires adults to recognize the uniqueness of students, their individual strengths and needs, and to treat every student as capable of success. The definition also means that we are disrupting and interrupting systems of challenging and countering bias and unfair policies and practices, and it's a continual self-reflection of our own practices and how they impact student outcomes. So, we must do our work with regard to improving outcomes for students and addressing the needs of the whole child through the lens of equity. And so next, Dr. Chris Gammon, who was introduced earlier, again, he's our Executive Director for the Department of Curriculum Instruction, will now share a common language already in use in the district that supports the need to focus on the whole child. So Dr. Gammon.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. So the ultimate test of our ability to create a better Orange County Schools for all students will reside in our ability to transfer our words this evening into action. In that light, we spent a great deal of time as a cabinet team asking a lot of thought-provoking questions leading through this work, really to drive our work and our decision-making. And so one of those first driving questions for us is how can we make our work actionable? So you can see before you these key domains of learning, our vehicle to serve the whole child and to authentically double down on literacy, climate and culture, and stakeholder engagement is to center all of our work around a common language. And so our common language that will reappear throughout this evening's presentation and throughout our work moving forward is ISIL. We're streamlining this common language across the organization to enable all stakeholders to problem solve more effectively and efficiently and to build collective capacity from the classroom to the boardroom. So why ISIL? A common mistake that schools and districts often make is to assume that student learning challenges exist primarily in the learner. We're underestimating the degree oftentimes to which we are responsible for creating equitable opportunities for all learners through instructional strategies, curriculum decisions, and environmental conditions. So the ISIL framework here, we're really focusing on how our curriculum is being taught. Is the curriculum being differentiated to meet the needs of all learners? What is being taught? Is the curriculum appropriate for every student? And where is the instruction taking place? How is this environment impacting learning? And so this evening, our team will highlight the current reality in Orange County Schools in the 3 areas of focus, which again are literacy, climate and culture, and stakeholder engagement. And we will explain how our proposed actions and recommended budget will serve to interrupt current trends in student achievement for all learners. We will take action by operating through the ongoing common language of instruction, curriculum, and environment. And so at this time, shut it down. I'm going to throw it back to Dr. Felder.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gammon. So to further set the context for the 2020-2021 budget proposal, we're going to delve deeper into the 3 foci, and which again will all be carried out through the lens of equity. And so the first foci that we will begin with is literacy. And so this is a slide that you've seen in a previous presentation where we emphasize the fact that there is a high cost to low literacy achievement. We know that 9 out of 10 high school dropouts struggle to read in 3rd grade, that youth who fail to complete high school by the age of 20 are 7 times more likely to be persistently poor. We know that 2/3 of all youth in the juvenile court system could not read in 4th grade. In fact, the research shows us that prisons are built based on the reading achievement at the end of 3rd grade. And last but not least, that $3.1 billion are spent annually to improve the literacy skills of entry-level workers. And so indeed, there's a high cost to low literacy. And then when we think about literacy, with regards to today's context, we should be thinking about it in terms of, again, it's a civil right. It's about the participation in civic life and assessing social supports. We need to think about it in terms of how is it preparing our students for access and opportunities to higher education. And we also need to think about literacy in the context of workplace demands and challenges. So if we look at and consider civic life and accessing social supports, we know that civic participation, accessing and navigating, for example, the healthcare system and interfacing with the school district, require the ability to read and understand information. We know that with regards to preparation for higher education, that the average college coursework requires 80 pages, not 5 or 3 or 10, 80 pages of independent. That means the teacher's not standing over your shoulder, you're not in a small group getting instruction. It's independent reading per week. And up to 60% of community college freshmen are assigned to remedial reading courses. With regards to workplace demands and challenges, again, the 21st century worker needs to clearly communicate, both in speech and in writing, with a wide variety of audiences, and effectively manage the abundant information that defines the digital age, all things that we do each and every day in our work. It requires business leaders report a steady decline in workplace literacy skills, hence leading to the $3.1 billion that is spent every year to bolster entry-level workers' literacy skills. So without question, there's no doubt whatsoever that literacy plays a huge role in today's context. And so again, these are data that we've shared with you previously. These are Orange County Public Schools data. And so again, these are 2018-2019 end of grade English language arts reading performance. It compares Orange County schools. So this is aggregate data to the state of North Carolina. And we are about the same with regards to student achievement, with regards to literacy. And it's sobering data because it indicates that 45%, almost half of our grades 3 to 8 students are not proficient in literacy. When we disaggregate the data, it's even more sobering, as we can clearly see that certain groups of students are underperforming with regards to literacy, particularly our Black students, our Latino students, our economically disadvantaged students, our English language learners, our students in foster care, our homeless students, our students with disabilities. There's not one of those groups are scoring at a level 5. Most are at a level 1 or 2, which means they are not at grade level. And that's a problem. And so the next set of data that you will see, Dr. Gammon's gonna take us through, and it too is familiar data. We shared these data with you, actually Mrs. Smiley shared these data with you at the February 24th Equity Task Force meeting with the board. So we wanted to bring those data back. So Dr. Gammon?
Thank you again, Dr. Felder. At our last board meeting, Ms. Smiley shared, as Dr. Felder has mentioned, quite sobering data comparing specific subgroups in Orange County schools to like subgroups in other districts across North Carolina in the area of reading performance. Overall, when it comes to literacy achievement, we have significant growth needs for all learners. We all collectively agree that while we are doing many, many wonderful things across our schools on a daily basis, we are not doing what we need to do for all kids. And you'll see on this slide, this is a comparison of economically disadvantaged students, and we're looking at grades 3 through 8 reading data. 91% of districts across North Carolina are teaching more of their economically disadvantaged students to read than we are in Orange County schools. 96% of districts are teaching more of their Hispanic students to read than we are, which means only 4 districts are currently performing worse than Orange County schools in that subgroup. The transition here, or the opposite, is that for our white students and our economically advantaged students, Orange County Schools is, as was said at the last board meeting, one of the best, if not better, districts in the state. The bars that you see on the left compare our economically disadvantaged to the far left to our economically advantaged students, which you see second to the left. The bars on the right are comparing our Hispanic students, which would be the third to the right, to our white students, which is that final bar to the right. And then, as you can see here, the story repeats itself for many groups of students. Our black students, our English language learners, homeless students, students with disabilities, and students in foster care. As you can see, in comparison to those like districts across the state, you can see where Orange County Schools falls there. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jason Johnson. He's our Executive Director of Schools. He is going to share our second area, or our second foci, which is climate and culture.
Thank you, Dr. Gann. Climate and culture work hand in hand to make our students and staff successful. Rigorous instruction, caring for our students, social and emotional well-being, and creating safe learning environments will be the building blocks of an Orange County education. We will ensure all students have daily learning opportunities that enable them to create, communicate, collaborate, and think critically. Currently, the district suspension and expulsion rates for our young men of color far exceed those of other groups. To address our challenges, Orange County Schools will remove barriers to opportunities in our policies, procedures, and practices that are preventing students or staff from flourishing. According to DeFore and Aker, the reform efforts of the last 30 years have failed to improve student achievement in schools because they failed to adequately address the importance of the culture and climate of schools. With that said, under culture and climate, social and emotional learning is pivotal. We all know of students depicted in the first caption, but in reality, we're all like the student. It is hard for all of us to handle math class when our basic needs are not being met. That's just being human, and it's really tough on a kid trying to handle a math class or life when they have these type of struggles. We can no longer just say toughen up, or get over it, or just flat out ignore it. We must show empathy and maintain positive relationships. Research is clear that without relationships, learning will not take place. The second caption really speaks to basic needs and the points of meeting our basic needs before learning will take place. Sharita Cobb, our Director of Student Support Services, will present data that will support our focus on culture and climate, and in particular, our need to focus on social and emotional learning.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Some of this data has been shared previously, but we just want to go back over it as we continue to think about social emotional learning and the culture and climate that our students are coming into the building with. So if you look at this data, 50% of Orange County elementary school students, schools qualify for Title I funding. And free and reduced demographic percentages have increased from 2015 from 41% to 43% here in 2019. 70% of our pre-K students are on free and reduced meals. So that's even before they get into our kindergarten, first grade classrooms. And we are still doing supplemental food distributions throughout our schools, and we shared this data with you previously. And as we continue to think about our social emotional learning, we have to keep in mind what our students are coming to the table with. Food insecurities and the lack of food can impact the learning greatly, and we have to keep that foremost in our mind. Okay, stay on. Okay. So Orange County Schools, climate and culture continue. As we look at this, we continue to talk about what our students are coming to the table with. Over the past years, we've had 150 plus McKinney-Vento students every year. Those are homeless students that are coming to the table with that in the back of their mind.
We have presently 25 to 30 plus ESSA students, and ESSA is Every Student Succeeds Act, which says that foster children now will be treated the same as McKinney-Vento students and given the right to stay in their home school if they so desire, and it is feasible. So that's another thing. I've been taken out of my home and now I have to possibly go to a new school. So kids are coming to the table with that. We have to date served 135 plus suicide assessments within the district this year. We've had 78 plus, and I say plus because today adds numbers to those numbers that you see there. 78 plus social service referrals based on students being hurt, food neglect, medical neglect, and things like that. And we've had 19 plus non-medical emergencies, because those have been for students who are experiencing mental health tragedies and or experiences. And we have to date 400 plus students that have been referred and or are receiving school-based mental health services. So when we think about this slide right here and we talk about what kids are coming to the table with, our kids are coming to the table with all of those things. So we've got to make sure that our climate and our culture is one that will support their learning. This next slide talks about our 2018-2019 suspensions and expulsions and how they play into the culture as well. And NCDPI has this on their website, and it talks about this. When you look at this, this is per 1,000 students. So they're saying that when you look at the male students, when you look at black students, when you look at 2 or more races, economically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities, the discrepancies between the children who are receiving short-term suspensions is breathtaking. And all of that plays into the climate and culture that our children are walking into every day. So as we continue to look at the climate and culture in our schools, we have to make sure that we are examining suspensions and expulsions and what we're doing to kind of, like Chris said, stop going the same way and maybe turn and look back and do something different for our kids. So now we have Ms. Amber Wilson from New Hope Elementary, and Amber's gonna talk to us a little bit about climate and culture and how we really need to focus on that as we move forward.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I don't know if I'm nervous and my heart's racing or just because looking at this data is just so hard, right? So as a school principal at a really large elementary school that has a lot of needs, we live this every day, right? Social emotional learning is not just about dealing with our students that have adverse childhood experiences and trauma. Yes, as we work to build the resiliency in those students, at the same time, we have to do the work with our other students that don't face those things, because they have to develop empathy, and they have to develop compassion, and they have to learn to exist in this community where they learn together and they support each other, and they celebrate the differences that they bring into a classroom. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to be at a school where we do focus heavily on social emotional learning. We don't have a choice, right? Our students have to learn to see the benefits of diversity. They have to learn to be with people that don't look like them, that don't speak the same language that they do, that don't have the same background and experiences that they have, that they bring to that classroom every day. But I'm not alone in that work. Yes, at New Hope, I feel like it's magnified a little bit just because of our size and the population, but every school principal in this district sees the same things in their buildings. It's about how are we putting supports in place up front? How are we building things into classroom practices every single day for every single kid, right? It's about taking a minute to look at our discipline data, and even though we're making all these steps to be preventative, that we're trying to add social emotional learning into the core work that we do every day in our schools, we're falling short when you look at the discipline data. We're missing the mark in so many places, and so we have to continue to be reflective practitioners and think about what additional resources are gonna make the difference. What additional things can we do in schools every single day or with classrooms? What professional development do our teachers need? How do we connect our parents into this work? How do we help kids take some ownership in this work, right? But all of these things take time, they take resources, because overnight you don't teach children replacement behaviors. Overnight, you don't get kids to open up to you and be able to leverage relationships with adults and other children across a building. So yes, we want to move this data, we want to move it fast, but we also have to recognize that this work takes time and it takes everybody working together, from the schools all the way to the school board. So thank you for your attention to this. I hope that that's, I was given 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes and
So, tonight you've heard of the importance of focusing on climate and culture, specifically social and emotional learning. You have seen the data, not just tonight, but in previous meetings. You have heard from one of our principals, Ms. Wilson, about the reality of her school and other schools in terms of the importance of having a focus on social and emotional learning. So to help with our climate and culture, we are proposing an addition of a student emotional and learning coordinator. This person will help with implementation of social and emotional learning strategies and skills such as promoting positive teacher and student relationships, creating conditions that facilitate and support social and emotional learning in students, establish positive and predictable classroom environments, and help students navigate peer relationships and responsible decision making. This person will also help with the implementation of restorative justice practices with fidelity in all schools. All schools have had the training, but what they have not had in the past is the follow-up. The schools need more professional development and coaching, and the principals need support in their schools to ensure that restorative practices are taking place effectively. At this time, Ms. Sarah Pitts, our Interim Chief Operations Officer, will continue the conversation around climate and culture with a focus on environment from the lens of operations.
Good evening again. So, at Orange County Schools, we understand that the state of our buildings and the classroom learning environment directly impacts the climate and culture of our district and ultimately the ability of our students to learn. Currently, the Operations Department, including the Departments of Maintenance, Facilities and Construction, Environmental Health and Safety, share the same maintenance technicians to complete the workload required to maintain the integrity and infrastructure of all 19 of our campuses district-wide. The maintenance technicians complete, on average, 5,000 work orders annually. Maintenance consists of 15 technician positions, including all trades, to serve almost 1.4 million square feet of buildings. This includes the recently added Welcome Center as far as Building 1. That is a ratio of 1 technician to 93,000 square feet. Industry standards recommend 1 technician for every 50,000 square feet, and that is per the International Facility of Management Associations. Currently, 5 of the 15 positions do not work inside of buildings at all. They are in positions where they are working outside of actual school buildings. The Cedar Ridge New Classroom Addition will add approximately 50,000 square feet to our maintenance needs. And with the addition of the Cedar Ridge classroom and the approval of these 4 positions recommended, the ratio of technicians to square footage would be 19 techs per 1.5 million square feet approximately, or 1 tech to 76,000 square feet. If the 4 positions that we're discussing tonight are not added, the result will be a ratio of 1 technician per 96,000 square feet of buildings. That will be double what industry standards recommend. The total annual capital allotment that we are going to spend this year on projects and improvements is $25 million. So on top of what the Operations Department already has to do, this will also require us to provide some construction administration and oversight of the work being completed via our contractors. On top of all of this, maintenance also has to keep up with our comprehensive preventative maintenance program, which we are struggling to do because our technicians are currently being occupied responding to work orders. You know, preventative maintenance is critical to ensuring long-term functioning of all of our equipments, for providing those comfortable learning spaces for the children, and also to ensure that we maintain and sustain good indoor air quality in our buildings. So the addition of the 4 maintenance tech positions will enable us to devote them primarily to preventative maintenance, while freeing up our trade positions to address repairs in a more consistent and timely manner. So what we're requesting is 1 electrician. We currently have 2, and they're unable to respond in a timely manner to address the regular electrical requirements throughout the district. This often results in us having to contract out in work that could have been done in-house. And of course, when they have to contract out, our technicians lose time that they could be working because we have to solicit vendors, we have to walk them through the project, we have to do all of those other items. So this delays our ability to do more electrical work. And as part of our safety plan implementation that we are in the process of doing throughout the district, it's gonna require that several cameras be added to the district that will require our electricians in upkeep and monitoring those. We are also asking for 3 maintenance techs. These would allow additional techs to provide supports, and it would also allow us to utilize our licensed employees in the most efficient and effective manner. For example, a large project would often require 1 licensed technician, but an assistance of someone else. We don't have general techs to provide that assistance, so it requires 2 licensed technicians to create that work. So having these assistants will allow our licensed techs to be utilized more effectively. So, as we've talked about, Orange County Schools currently does not have adequate staff to address our work orders, repairs, and preventative maintenances, which are required to maintain not only the integrity of our buildings, but to create those instructional learning spaces which are safe and healthy for our staff and students. So far, as a staff, we have presented information on how this proposed budget focuses on the improvement of our literacy rates, plus encompasses improvement of our climate and culture. Next will be Dr. Dina Keeling, who will speak to you on the final foci, which is stakeholder engagement and our overarching focus on equity. Good evening.
Stakeholder engagement, family and community members need access to our schools to support all of our children in their learning journey. Given the achievement and opportunity gaps and disparities based on race, service provided, and income in our school district, it's gonna take the whole community to make a difference for our students. Stakeholders include parents and guardians, teachers, students, staff, and anyone with a personal, professional, civic, financial interest or concern in our school district. Engaging with the full community, it's not just those who have traditionally been active and vocal. It's vital to the success and improvement of our school district. Research demonstrates that strong stakeholder engagement can improve outcomes for all students. We are already accomplishing our goal of engaging brighter stakeholders with our listen and learns, which are informing our strategic plan, and this must continue. The community can anticipate seeing more transparency and inclusiveness, and they can anticipate seeing a focus on engaging staff, students, families, and the entire community towards a culture of equity. So as has been stated, we have 3 focus: literacy, culture and climate, and stakeholder engagement, and they all fall under the umbrella of equity. When we discuss equity, you will hear us refer to all students, and you will also hear us refer to our centered students. And this data helps us to see how we come to those 2 groups of students. When we look at this data, we see that across a 7-year trend, the achievement scores for all students have been stagnant. As well, there is a consistent gap in the scores. This tells us that we have to identify the barriers to raising achievement for all of our students. As well, we have to identify what additional barriers exist for our Black, Hispanic, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and English language learners. Our equity policy speaks to raising the level of achievement for all students, removing any barriers and biases that exist, particularly for historically marginalized groups, identifying disparities such as suspension disproportionality, and hiring, training, supporting, and retaining a diverse staff. We are proposing the addition of 3 equity facilitators who will assist with implementing the equity policy, who will also assist with the examination of policies, practices, and protocols through an equity lens, and who will be focused on ensuring that we are being intentional about keeping our centered groups centered. In terms of literacy, all of the research on learning and the educational experience of students of various cultural backgrounds points back to the incorporation of students' culture and cultural learning styles. The equity facilitators will be moving the work of culturally relevant environments and instruction forward with an emphasis on literacy, and they will assist school-based equity teams in meeting the goals of their school equity plans. In terms of climate and culture, research also says that diverse staff is beneficial for all students, and particularly for students of like cultures. However, diverse teachers often feel isolated, and this work is counter to us retaining staff. The equity facilitators will assist with recruiting a diverse workforce and will provide a support network for staff to assist with retention. They will also provide equity training and training in the equity policy as part of all new hire onboarding. Students are part of our stakeholders. We've said that repeatedly. Orange High School sent out a survey to students to gauge interest in an honors African American Studies and honors Latin American Studies course. They have 60 students who have already signed up as expressing an interest. The equity facilitators will lead the work by teaching these courses. They will also provide direct support to students and to student equity teams. They will also engage and provide support to parents and guardians of our centered groups and work with community agencies and organizations to identify assets and support, and they will lead parent and community sessions. The addition of 3 equity facilitators will bring us in close alignment with Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools equity staff, and this will allow for richer collaboration between the district's equity departments. So I now turn the presentation over to Rhonda Rath, who is our Chief Financial Officer, who will tell us how we get there.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so up to this point, you have heard our areas of focus: literacy, climate and culture, stakeholder engagement, all up under the umbrella of equity. We have shared the data that supports why we are focusing on these areas. Now, I will share with you our recommended budget to support moving us in this direction. For those of you who may not be aware, Orange County Schools receives funding based on average daily membership, or the acronym ADM that you will hear us refer to quite frequently. Average daily membership is the total number of school days within a given term, usually a school month, that a student's name appears on the current roll of a class, regardless of their being present in that class. The number of days in membership equates to an average for each school month, is based on the number of those days in membership for all of those non-violating students. As you can see in the data pictured here, Orange County Schools' average daily membership was fairly consistent up into the 2018-2019 school year, where we experienced a decrease of approximately 200 students. Now, some may ask why we have charter school students on this graph as well. Well, state statute requires that if a student attends a charter school, the local school administration unit in which the child would reside if they were not in a charter school, we are required to transfer the amount of the local per pupil expense to that charter school. Orange County Schools is one of the few counties that the Board of County Commissioners provides funding for every student in charter schools. If this was not the case, the actual per pupil available to Orange County students would be decreased as a result of this state statute. Even though our student population has decreased since fiscal year 2018, and we are beginning an upcline back in the other direction, as we have shared with you already, our children's needs have unfortunately become greater, as we have shared in the data that we presented to you earlier. At this time, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has not released its projected ADM for the upcoming school year. So for the purposes of beginning our budget discussions, we had actually looked at the best of month 1 and month 2 of our actual average daily membership, which is projecting us at 9 higher than our last year's projection.
Do you mind if we just do a quick motion to extend the meeting?
How long are you suggesting? So I'll know if I wanna vote for it or not.
I can't make the motion, but Dr. Felder, what is your recommendation to complete the?
Maybe another 15 minutes? 10,
Motion to
15?
extend 20 minutes. Second.
All in favor?
In fact, excuse me,
Oh, sorry.
clarification, she said 15 minutes?
15.
But the motion
No,
was
I was
actually
Okay.
20.
I-
The motion
I would-
physically
if
was
we
20
don't go
with
up
the
to
second.
20, I'm okay at that, but I would like to have ample time to finish this, and if it's cost me 5 minutes, I'm okay at that.
Okay.
I don't want it rushed.
Okay,
Okay.
so we have 20 minutes with a primary and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Please continue.
Okay. Our projected charter students are based upon what our actual enrollment is, and as of January 2020, our actual enrollment of charter students is 883, which is a 40 increase over the previous year. The Department of Public Instruction does not provide funding for our out-of-district students that are attending Orange County schools. Therefore, we have to take them out of our total student count to determine what we will receive funding for. For the upcoming school year, that number has been identified as 110 out-of-district students. In total, we are anticipating a growth of 36 in our average daily membership for next year. If we apply the same per pupil that we received from the county for this fiscal year, we can anticipate receiving approximately $35.6 million. In addition to the per pupil funding, we receive fines and forfeitures collected by the county. Per general statute, it states that all proceeds for penalties and forfeitures that are collected by the General Court of Justice in each county shall be remitted based upon their due portion to the local school administrative units. Our budget for those fines and forfeitures is $220,000. Examples of fines and forfeitures include criminal penalties in Orange County, driving infractions in Orange County, and any money seizures that occur in this county. When factoring in these receipts, we anticipate receiving $35.8 million from the county in fiscal year 21. In order to fund the growth of 36 that I shared with you on the previous slide, we would require an additional $26 per pupil. Now that I've talked with you about what we anticipate receiving in revenue, I would like to talk with you about what we anticipate that we're going to spend. So first, let's start with our continuation budget. At this time, we are planning for a 5% increase for certified staff and a 2% increase for classified staff in an approved state budget for fiscal year 21. I'm claiming it.
Dream on.
Yes, we all know we are in uncharted territory right now, but however, historically, when you look at the data in previous years, when you're coming off of a year with 0 increases, usually there is as much as up to a 7% increase that is reflected in salaries.
Election year too.
We already know from current legislation passed in House Bill 226 that the retirement rate will increase from 19.7% to 21.44%, and that the employer portion of the health insurance premiums that are paid on behalf of staff participating in the plan will increase from $6,306 annually to $6,647 annually. With these anticipated mandates, that will increase our total local budget $984,000. In order to continue operations at the current level, as well as to fund the anticipated growth, an additional $147 per pupil will be required. And as you can see there, our per pupil for this current year is $4,352. So this evening, you've heard from a great team, and they have shared with you our recommended focus for the upcoming fiscal year. Now, I would like to discuss our recommended expansion items to support these focus areas in literacy, climate and culture, and stakeholder engagement, all under the equity umbrella. In an effort to continue the equity work in the district by building capacity around culturally relevant teaching practices, we recommend the addition of 3 equity facilitators. As Dr. Keeling discussed earlier in this presentation, the addition of 3 equity facilitators will assist with implementing the equity policy, the examination of policies, practices, and protocols through an equity lens, and particularly ensuring we are intentional in keeping our centered groups centered. It is anticipated that these 3 positions, including benefits, would equate to $213,000. In support of the literacy foci, we recommend the addition of 2 academically and gifted teachers. This will provide a full-time AIG position in every elementary school. The anticipated cost associated with those 2 positions, including all applicable benefits, is estimated at $160,000. We have seen the benefits of the dual language immersion program in kindergarten at New Hope Elementary. To build capacity in this program, we recommend expanding the dual language program to pre-K at New Hope. The anticipated expense associated with that is $40,000. As an actionable way to double down on the literacy foci and interrupt the status quo, we recommend the addition of a literacy director for the 2021 fiscal year. We understand the value of our stakeholders and the impact that they have on our students' success. We would recommend the addition of 2 district translators to better support our non-English speaking families. As a result, those positions would equate to approximately $160,000. Again, all of the numbers that are being projected here include all of the applicable benefits associated with those positions. As our interim chief operations officer shared with you earlier, we are requiring our maintenance staff to serve almost double the square feet of what the industry deems appropriate. In an effort to address this and impact climate and culture, we recommend the addition of 4 maintenance technicians, which would equate to approximately $192,000. We shared the data surrounding the social and emotional challenges many of our learners face. In an effort to increase our capacity in serving the social and emotional piece of our students, we recommend the addition of a social and emotional learning coordinator, which is anticipated at $74,100. So in total, to initiate these recommendations and begin this work, an additional $116 per pupil or $944,600 would be required from our commissioners. For this current fiscal year, the commissioners approved the per pupil funding of our bottom block there of $4,352.25. In order to fund the anticipated ADM growth and the mandated salary and benefit increases that we are anticipating, we will need an additional $147 on top of the $4,352. That is just to continue operations at our current level, make no other changes other than the mandates that we are anticipating. To begin the work that will support the focus areas of equity, literacy, climate, culture, and stakeholder engagement and equity, an additional $116 per pupil is needed. This will bring our total recommended per pupil funding request to $4,615 or $35.8 million. I just, a little bit of interesting data for, this is a $263 per pupil increase over what we received. Last year, we requested $4,387 per pupil, which was a $396 increase over the previous year. Now let's talk about fund balance. The audited end of the year fund balance at June 30th, 2019 was $4.7 million. Per our local budget that was approved on August the 12th and the addition of a few requested fund balance appropriations, $1.9 million was restricted for specific purposes, leaving our unassigned or available fund balance at $2.8 million. At this time, we would like to recommend restricting the following items as fund balance appropriations in our next upcoming budget. $250,000 to strengthen literacy instruction by ensuring rigorous curricula are in every school, to ensure educators receive the professional development and support to implement this instruction with fidelity. $75,000 in support of climate and culture and stakeholder engagement. The intent being to support implementing social emotional learning strategies with fidelity throughout our district. As we are hearing at our listens and learns, also customer service and communications is an area we need to strengthen. We would like to offer professional development to all staff surrounding effective customer service. Finally, we would like to recommend a $750,000 fund balance appropriation to address the salary compressions in our current classified salary scales. At this time, years of experience of 0 to 11 years on our classified scale make the exact same amount of money. We would like to reserve some funds to begin addressing that compression, to begin creating sustainable salary scales that will have step increases in them that will be able to allow us not only to recruit, but also to retain the qualified staff that we currently have. So as a result of these fund balance appropriations that are recommended, it is projected that our fiscal year 21 unassigned fund balance will be between $1.7 and $2 million. Questions?
Oh, there was a note about, the expansion budget. Help me recall, I thought we had a literacy director at one point.
We did.
Yeah, so.
That position was frozen, and those funds were redistributed. We are recommending that we unfreeze that position.
Remember, that was Tyra Hewitt. Okay.
Other questions? Sarah?
I have one about the salary compression, addressing that. I'm really glad we're gonna address it. I think my question is, how will that work in the longer term? So in the short term, I remember you saying that in the short term it would cost more sort of in the very beginning, but would addressing that and changing our scales sort of next year to the county commissioners bump up our continuation ask in order to sort of maintain that, or how will that work over?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we have talked about previously, the first year that you implement the salary schedules to adjust everyone to be in line with, we are gonna do a study where we actually look at how we compare to other districts and also how we compare to the market in this county. At that, then we will develop salary scales that we know that we can sustain. The first year that we implement them, you are right, that is the most significant impact because you're moving the individuals to get them on the scales where they need to be. The key, I think, in going forward to the commissioners, because you're right, we wanna be prudent, and we also wanna be stewards of what funds that we receive from our taxpayers, and we wanna make sure that we develop scales that can be sustainable going forward. That is why I am asking that we appropriate fund balance to begin, and this work will have to be phased in. It's not reasonable to expect commissioners and our taxpayers to be able to fund changing these salary scales in 1 year. That is why, the $750,000 was asked for to be appropriated as a result to help implement that going forward.
Lori?
So I think this presentation was amazing. It's the best budget presentation I have seen. It is very easy to understand, and your points are well made about everything. The one question I have, and I touched on this earlier, is about the pre-K dual language expansion at New Hope and it being under curriculum. I'm so excited about that possibility. It's such a popular program, and I think that our community really values and wants it. I guess I'm trying to understand how it fits into the curriculum piece. Do you, Dr. Gammon, help articulate the curriculum between the Spanish and the English? Where does that exactly fall? What kind of supports are there?
Right, so, well, it's good that you're here. Stop here. So no, we do not drive the decisions that are made there. That's really been something that's been more isolated to New Hope, and Amber's been the one that's been driving that. At the building level with a lot of the work that she's done that she can speak to. I think we're partnering as far as the budgeting piece to be able to continue to expand it, I think is our role, and then providing the materials and resources that she needs, as well as compensating the teacher that comes in to the classroom, like we're taking care of those logistical things.
I guess for me as a board member, maybe this is a parking lot conversation for after this board meeting, since we are coming up on 10:15. But I guess I'm just thinking all the other schools have support around curriculum for all of their students, and I guess I just wanna make sure we're providing support where we need it, so maybe we can just circle back to that later.
Matthew?
Just one clarification point. When we were talking about our 3 equity facilitators, if I understood correctly, they're gonna be teaching a new honors class. You were talking about the African American Latina history courses that would be an honors course, and they may be teaching that. I like that. You're getting the staff into the classroom and seeing what's really going on. I like that. Thank you.
Sarah?
On the sort of school climate and culture piece, first, Ms. Wilson, I just wanted to say, I went to the New Hope Listen and Learn, and a number of the parents who were using the translator in the meeting spoke to the kind of school culture that you've created there. Their contributions to the conversation were so great, and there were so many of them in the room, and they really, they spoke to, what you had created there. So I wanted to thank you for that. The question that I had is, the proposed initiatives, in terms of adding the coordinator, implementing social emotional learning strategies and skills, this is a space where I thought we had done a bunch of things already, like capturing kids' hearts, and you spoke to the restorative justice piece and making sure that that's implemented with facility, but their fidelity, like, I thought we've been doing things, so I'm curious, like, what happened with those things, how, and I guess sort of related, like, what will the coordinator, like, actually be sort of doing, if that makes sense?
So, I wasn't here for that, but what I can tell you, and I'm sure Ms. Cobb can speak more to it, I just want to first say that Ms. Cobb is the office of one. And so, how things get traction in schools is not just to provide initial professional development and say good luck. Schools need ongoing support, training, coaching, modeling, resources, all of those things. And Ms. Cobbs cannot do that in isolation. I mean, she's outstanding, she literally walks on water, but
I don't know how she does it, just to be
Yeah,
clear.
I know,
So it's
I'm
not-
amazed, I'm amazed. But, Ms. Cobbs, if you wanna come and speak to.
No, I was just gonna say the same thing that, Dr. Felder was saying, is that just providing that ongoing support and, you know, inspection of what you're expecting, right? And so I can go out and make sure that the training happens, but then having to wrap back around by the time I can get back around again to do that inspection, to provide that extra support. That's what we're looking for when we look for that extra person to be able to focus solely on that. Because the other things that have been going on, you know, I mean, Amber spoke to all of the other social emotional supports and mental health supports, and being able to provide support there as well, that's where we're lacking.
I do
Go
have
ahead.
one more, if
Go
you
ahead.
have me to, okay. The 5 of the 15 technicians who don't work in the buildings, what are they doing?
We have one that is a warehouse tech, one is the custodial supervisor, and then we have 3 that are outside grounds. Yeah, but including athletic fields for the middle schools, yeah.
Right. That custodial supervisor is a new one that we did last year, isn't
Right,
it?
because of the
Right,
contracts.
yeah, that's a new position as well.
Any other comments?
Sorry, I have one suggestion. I know we're at 10:15 now. Okay, I have a small suggestion / request for the budget, which is if we do not currently subscribe to I think it's called the National Student Clearinghouse, the data about what happens to students in post-secondary after high school, it is not that expensive. We do have that. Amazing. I would love a presentation on that sometime, about what happens to our kids after high school, and how they're persisting in higher ed.
So I have many comments, but I'll try to limit them. One, excellent presentation, great detail. I love seeing how it connects to our equity and others. I would like to recommend that we ask the county commissioners for a one-time bonus to all of our staff and teachers, since we weren't able to get a budget this year. And we're also hearing that's a possibility that we're not gonna see next year. I think we need to show that we value our teachers and request that the county commissioners consider that as a one-time bonus. Just a couple of other things. The maintenance techs, I'm worried that, I know today we're having trouble filling those positions. So are we thinking that these positions will be able to fill or maintain?
Do you want me to extend the
I
motion
mean-
to extend by 3 minutes?
3 minutes? Do we have a second?
5 minutes.
Second.
I'll do 5, I'll second 5 minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry.
One nay.
Nope, I don't have a problem
Okay.
being an alone person.
Yes, sir, we're hoping that we will be able to fill those. Currently, with our general techs, we can fill those positions. It's our licensed employees, especially the plumber, that we are seeing that our salaries are just not competitive with the market. So
How are
I
we?
can't say that we're gonna anticipate
So,
problems with filling them, but we're hoping that they will be filled, yes.
so I just have concern with us addressing that part. The other thing I was gonna say is, as y'all were talking about this, I think this would be an excellent opportunity for CTE and internship to take on those positions or others, just a thought. So what I didn't hear in this, and I'm just curious, is things that we've talked about, like the grow your own EC bonuses, TA work days and all that, is that going away? Or is that, we're continuing that? We're not expanding any of it?
That is correct. All
Okay.
of those items that you guys approved in last year's budget are included in the continuation.
Okay, but there's no expansion on them, okay. Also, the question is about, the HR benefits items that we've chatted about, like maternity, dental, medical, and others. Are those not being considered?
This is our recommended budget at this time. This is the first step of beginning to develop our final approved budget. So this is what has been recommended. What we will seek now is what you, as
Right.
a board, would like to recommend, either adding to this or changing in regards to this budget before it becomes your approved budget that goes to the county commissioners.
So currently, it's not in there.
Correct.
Right, I just wanted to highlight as thoughts. On the compression of the salaries, one of the questions or concerns I have is an industry, when that happens, when you do that, which is a great thing to do, when you get professional hires, it tends to break that. Do we know how we're gonna manage that as professional hires come in? Say a professional hire comes in and they have 5 years of experience, but you really like them and you bring them in and the band they come in is actually higher than what the experience band says. Do we know where we're now having that weird scenario where people are higher if they come in versus people that grow through the system? We don't have to answer that here, it's just a concern I have, is I know that this is a common problem, it's not unique to us, it's not unique to
My hope
schools.
is that as we go through this study and look at that data and build those, because we are working with HR closely, and they will be involved in this process.
Okay. On the student emotional and learning coordinator, I know we didn't get into all the details. Would that person also be working with county system and family referrals? Because sometimes it's not just the student, but the family and larger things. Would that be part of their role?
That's some of the things that we do now, so yes.
Okay, okay. I guess
Got 1 minute.
Thank you. No pressure, no pressure. I guess the last one I'll ask is, we talked about the reduced and free and reduced demographic percentages have increased, but I've heard many people say that these numbers are not really representative of what we actually have. Do we have a feeling to what the real numbers are? Or, the reason I ask is we know in the policy, the principals have the ability to assist in those cases where they believe they have it. But do we know what the real number is when we're looking at those?
I
No?
don't think so.
Okay.
But we believe that it's certainly higher than what we presented. We know that parents don't always fill out the free and reduced price meals form for lots of reasons. And our high school kids are not filling out or taking home. We know from the bags of food that goes home and the other requests that, resources that are being provided or referred.
The reason I ask is not so much on the food side, is one of the things that I've seen consistent in the elementaries is the household dress, clothing need, and that's done by magic, visible, invisible network of teachers and staff just knowing the needs and requesting it. And I think we've got to get more prescriptive on that, so schools that have more items can share them with other schools and share that through some type of network, because I know that the schools are doing an awesome job on it, and it's amazing that we're handling it. I'm just worried that sharing this more across the district between schools, hey, I need shoes, or this person
But they're
needs
gonna
shoes.
need support to do that.
Exactly.
That's where
Exactly.
expanding the, student services department would help.
It's an information item tonight, so.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you have something else, Rhonda?
I just wanted to
Oh.
add that the next
Sorry.
meeting is the public hearing in regards to the budget, and then we will begin taking your recommendations to what you want to see in the budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Linda.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, everybody.